What is up, everyone? It is Saturday, and it's time for the Saturday Deeper Dive. No Laffy and Adam here, but unfortunately, you'll have me, or I guess, did I say unfortunately? I meant fortunately, but honestly, depending upon your worldview, maybe unfortunately, you're going to have me, Chris Spags, and my old pal. People know him as Nerd Ass Greg. He's Greg Ehrenberg. He's here for you, too. How you doing, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately with you, apparently, there's all different ways to take it. At first, you were saying that I was like, oh, being a little like self-deprecating, and then you kind of double back. You should have just leaned in and just be like, yeah, we actually suck.
I mean, compared to Laffy and Adam, it's always hard to live up to that, but it's Saturday, so, the margin there drops a little bit, but thankfully, thanks to our sponsor, actually, is one you should be giving a shout out for having a Saturday Deeper Dive, and that's our friends over at SuperDraft, who are the controllers of the future of daily fantasy sports. Their multiplier format, we had a special show yesterday, went the extra half hour with me and my pal, Terry McBride, who's going to be coming up in a little bit with EMac, your old pal, for the Live Before Lock show, but we went through sort of the finer points there, really hammered out some of the better plays on SuperDraft. Some of them went the right way, some of them went the wrong way. That's the fun of SuperDraft, is you can play anybody you want on there with that multiplier format. The stars, the scrubs, it's really all comes down to how they're graded out, with a 1.05x multiplier for guys like Luka Doncic, a 2x multiplier for guys like Jarrett Vanderbilt, was just under that. And that's sort of the flexibility you have playing on SuperDraft. So go over there right now. Use the promo code Awesemo21 at superdraft.io or by downloading SuperDraft in the App Store. They'll give you $50 free on your first deposit of $50 or more. And they have some exciting contests coming up, including $1 million Super Bowl contest. So they're doing their best to get the prize pools up to get you guys in the door. So play over at SuperDraft. Support them for helping us put on this show. And make sure you guys smash that like button as well. We got about 800, 900 people in this room right now, 110 likes. So please just hit that like button immediately and don't hit the dislike button. It's too early in the show to do that. You can save that for all of our takes. Greg, we're going to go game by game here. So let's get right into it. The first game on today's slate, Milwaukee, a 119.3 implied total at Charlotte, a 111.3 implied total. This one, highest total, or one of the highest total games on the slate. Certainly a spot where yesterday we saw New Orleans, a team that you wouldn't think of having this massive upside, did get there versus Milwaukee. Today you get Charlotte also on a back-to-back. How are you feeling about the Milwaukee side in this one? Because I'll say right away, I think Giannis one of the strongest plays on the slate. And I think for me, if his ownership is going to be around 15% as it currently is on DraftKings, I think he'll also be one of my highest exposed guys as well.
So, what's funny is earlier in the day when I was writing the deeper dive article for Adam, because not only do we do this show in place of Adam, I also do his article for him on Saturdays as well. I didn't think I was going to be all that interested in Giannis, but as I started building lineups, particularly on DraftKings, I started to get to him a ton. Not as much on FanDuel, although he's still in the player pool. But here's the reason why I got to him a lot on DK, is there's so much good value, I feel like, at the point guard position that it just made sense to spend up for Giannis over somebody like Damian Lillard. So earlier in the day, I was thinking like, all right, I like Lillard a lot. We still call him out. We still have Nurkic out. There's a bunch of other injuries they're dealing with now. Robert Covington is questionable. Derek Jones is out. So I just thought that it made a whole lot of sense to go to Damian Lillard because of all the injuries Portland was dealing with. But then when it just kind of came out to a points per dollar build where I was looking at some of the top plays, I got to guys like LaMelo Ball, DeJounte Murray, Lonzo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, all those guys who are guards that I thought made for better points per dollar plays than Lillard. And then I needed to spend up my salary elsewhere. And it ended up going to Giannis more often than not, especially because there's just so many weaker forward options as compared to point guard and guard overall, where I think there's a lot of good value. So I think just because of positional scarcity, I get up to Giannis more than anything else. Then overall on the high end, you're comparing him to, Luka, Lillard, and those three. I don't know why I thought there was a fourth guy, but so it's those three guys who are in a tier by themselves. And it just because of the position he plays, I think that made Giannis a little bit more of a desirable play.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. I do have, Giannis projected for more raw points today than Damian Lillard. I think Lillard's in a nice spot. We talked a lot, basically on all the shows we do here on the Awesemo channel. Going against Chicago is going to be a very good situation for a lot of teams. That game actually does have the legitimate highest total on the slate, and the Chicago defense is so bad that you could certainly make a case for Lillard. But right now, Lillard projected for a bit more ownership. So to me, Giannis looks like a very strong play. I mean, I do think, there's some concerns about his minutes as well. He did play a good amount yesterday, especially what we're used to from Giannis over the last few years, where we have seen his minutes limited for the most part in a way you're not seeing for the top players. Is that something you'd be concerned about at all on this back-to-back, Greg, given that, it's still, the total is what it is. And I think I got to play it straight if we are going to have Giannis being, people may be afraid of playing him more because of that reason.
Yeah. So here's the thing with Giannis though, is his minutes are way up as of late. Listen to the last handful of games for Giannis. 40 minutes, 35, 36, 38, 39. That doesn't mean that I think he's going to continue to play those minutes, except at least in the past, we've looked at Giannis's production, his playing time. He's always been a guy who plays, barely over 30 minutes per game. And the minutes are so up as of late. And he's not really been an overly popular play as of late either. People have I think there's a little bit of Giannis fatigue at this point also, where I think that him winning back-to-back MVPs and the Bucks failing to perform in the playoffs, that shouldn't matter for DFS, but I think it lingers in people's minds. I think people are just kind of a little bit over Giannis at this point, and the Bucks have been a little bit underwhelming to start the season. So I don't know that he's going to continue to play, 36, 37, 38 minutes, but he doesn't have to at his price point on FanDuel or DraftKings because he is quite a bit cheaper than we're used to seeing him for most of last year.
Yeah, I agree with you somewhat with the concept of Giannis fatigue. I think it also coincides with the fact that his usage has been down a bit. Going back to last year, he was a 36.7% usage guy. This year down to 33.8%. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but those extra 3 possessions or a rounded up 3 possessions can be the difference between Giannis having a ceiling day or Giannis steadily getting to where we need him to get in terms of being at least a 5x value, hopefully being able to hit a target score even higher than that. But I just think the spot against Charlotte, a team that gives up a lot of assists, is one thing that I think is interesting. They give up a lot of assisted twos, a lot of assisted threes, more than league average. They also give up a lot of 3-point attempts. They give up 12% more shots at the rim than league average. I think Charlotte's a team that defensive efficiency wise looks better than they probably are. And to me, that puts me on Giannis a little bit more, assuming that we don't get him scratched here, hopefully during the live before lock show. So we don't have to deal with that. We can just actually make our lineups better because of it. But Greg, the other Bucks here, any guys jumping out to you? Because I think Drew Holiday, to me, on the cusp of usability. Brook Lopez as well. I don't mind getting there. I don't see much use for Chris Middleton, but I think this game could be competitive, or it wouldn't surprise me if it is. So you get any other Bucks if you're not getting the Giannis?
I'm not. So Drew Holiday, to me, is somebody who's been a little bit overpriced all season. He just doesn't have the same role with Milwaukee that he had last year with New Orleans. The usage is slightly better as of late, but still, for the year, he's a guy, 19.4% usage rate. It was 24.6 last year when he's in New Orleans. And still, he's a guy who remains fairly expensive on FanDuel and DraftKings. I think his price needs to come down a little bit because his usage has been, like I said, much lower this year than last year. And his price has just kind of remained steady the entire season.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And Drew Holiday, to me, not a slam dunk projection by any stretch. I think for Awesemo, the same thing as well. And actually, the ownership projections are free today, so no pandering for likes for that. But if you want to hit the like button and celebrate the free ownership projections today, you can get in there. You do have to pay for the regular projections, which, of course, come from Awesemo himself. So make sure to go to awesemo.com/join. So you're just not relying on the freebie of the day here. You can actually build competent lineups with all the tools that we have, including that boom bust tool. Fantastic way of determining where the leverage actually lies on the slate for the big tournaments, or if you're doing single entry or 3-entry max, all of those. The Charlotte side, Greg, I'm also curious your thoughts about, because Cody Zeller is a guy that I've been on a lot, and a lot of the field was yesterday, and maybe they're going to be a little bit chafed by his performance, where he didn't have quite the value smashing day he had against Indiana the first time they played, but also had some foul trouble, which I think kept from getting where he needs to. He's a guy, to me, that today I'm going to be heavy on, I think, but I have some genuine concern that maybe they go away from Zeller here because of the matchup, maybe spread the floor a little bit more with PJ Washington. Do you have a feel here for Zeller, because his ownership is going to be much lower with the price being up on DraftKings especially, but I do think there could be some cause for concern with if you are going to get a lot of him, like I think I will.
I actually think his playing time yesterday was a little more positive than concerning. So the foul trouble, that's always going to be an issue for Big Ben, right? They're going to get in foul trouble occasionally. We've seen it from Cody Zeller in the past. He picked up 2 fouls and then a third foul really quickly in the first half yesterday. So he played 8 minutes in the first half. He played 18 minutes in the second half of that game. So I think that the intention here seems to be, as long as Cody Zeller doesn't get in foul trouble, they want to give him 30 plus minutes. And his price is still a little bit too cheap compared to where we've seen him priced, historically. He's still a guy who averages around a fantasy point per minute. And we've always seen him priced in the low 5K to high 4K range. Still priced at 4,500 on DK. FanDuel, he is at, trying to remember, 4,900. So it's a little more reasonable. But still, I think the minutes, it looks like they're going to be more significant than they've ever been in the past. It would be nice if we just saw him, totally with no foul trouble yesterday to get a better feel for it. But 18 second half minutes, that's a lot for a guy who's a fairly decent fantasy producer and, is also a pivotal part of the team when he's out there. So I feel pretty good about Cody Zeller as long as he avoids foul trouble. And I mean, who knows if that's going to be the case? But I think that I'll ask you a question this way. If he does not get in foul trouble, what would you expect from a minute-wise?
So, I mean, Awesemo has him at 25. I think, expecting him to get to 36 like he might have looked like he would get based on yesterday, it seems a little bit lofty to me. So the cause for concern I have is that, to me, Washington might be a guy that you go to. If you are getting dusted early, Washington can at least hit some threes. Zeller, not a terrible three-point shooter for a big man when he actually does put it. Actually, no, this year he's been pretty bad. I'm going to take that back entirely. Not a bad true shooting guy, but definitely not a good three-point shooter. So if you are going to have a guy who can spread the floor a little bit more, I do think that's PJ Washington. That's sort of my main cause for concern. But I guess just a pure guess, I think if we're to expect that to not be the case, I think he gets you 28 minutes. I think 30 minutes is a very safe possibility. And because of the way this offense runs, where it's, Greg, I don't know how much you want to watch Hornets games or how much you're paying attention to this stuff, but it's basically him screening every single play for whoever the lead ball handler is. And that gives him some opportunities in the pick and roll game that I think, against against Milwaukee, like that's a pretty good spot for him. So I'm going to take the bet and I think hope that he does get to 30.
So talking about the lead ball handlers on this team, because you referenced them there, and I'm going to be on Zeller also. He's not going to be a guy who's an all-in play or something like that. I mean, the other day when he was 3,400, both of us talked about how we wanted to get to him a ton. Although we had wavering opinions, but we settled on him being somebody who wanted to roster a ton by the end of Live Before Lock a few days ago. But so he's somebody who it looks like I'm going to probably have somewhere like the 30-ish, 25% range, which I think is a number I'm comfortable with. I was talking about some of those ball handlers that he set screens for. I don't know what to make of LaMelo Ball's minutes. They have been so all over the place lately. He was great yesterday, but here his last 5 games, 17 minutes, 28, 21, 22, 30. There's no rhyme or reason for it. There's no foul trouble involved. It's just some days LaMelo Ball plays 30 minutes. Some days LaMelo Ball plays 18 minutes. And if he plays 30 minutes, he's going to crush. He's going to be one of the best values on the slate. If he plays 16 minutes again, he's probably going to not be good because it's very hard to produce a substantial amount of fantasy points in those minutes. He's going to be in my player pool. I think that if he gets full minutes, he's going to be one of the best value plays on the slate. But if you just ask me how many minutes is he going to play, I throw my hands up in the air. I have no clue. There's no rhyme or reason for it. Sometimes they give him a bunch. Sometimes they don't. I don't know if you have a better feel for what his playing time is going to be. I'm good with going slightly overweight to the field on LaMelo Ball because I think that he has significant upside. His price on FanDuel is ridiculously cheap. He is $5,200 on FanDuel. That's a price that's impossible for me to totally ignore, but there's such a wide range of outcomes on him. I think he's a really good GPP play, and I'd be uncomfortable playing him in cash games.
Yeah, I'm very into him for GPPs today. I think his ownership is pretty high in our most recent run here. And again, ownership projections are free today, so you can see him yourself at DraftKings. He's about 21.6. Obviously, that can move a little bit as we get closer to lock here, which is at 5 p.m. West Coast time, 8 p.m. East Coast time. So keep that in mind. And you will have a Live Before Lock show coming up after this one with EMac and Terry McBride. So make sure to stay tuned on the link. But yeah, LaMelo to me, I think is really interesting. Here's part of why, and we kind of saw it yesterday in that Pelicans game. Part of why the Pelicans pulled out so early is they're willing to let Bledsoe and also LaMelo's brother Lonzo shoot threes unencumbered for that entire first half. And the result was New Orleans got up by like 25 points at one point, if I'm remembering correctly. He just really had really a lot of success from three. And I think LaMelo, I would guess they're going to give him a similar chance here where they're going to want him to shoot the three. Maybe he creates off of that. Maybe he does some useful things. But I think the opportunity is going to be there for him. And at his price point on DraftKings and on FanDuel, I think LaMelo is easily worth the field's exposure. And I think right now on DraftKings, I think I'm going to have about double the field.
Yeah, I think, and then the 5,200 price tag on FanDuel, like I had to nerf his minutes so much to make it so he doesn't come up in like 100% of lineups at a 5,200 price tag. And it's also just that thing where there's such a wide range of outcome with his minutes. I don't know what to expect from there. I definitely think that he looks like the strongest point guard play on all of FanDuel at 5,200. The ownership's at 25.5%. I don't think that's quite high enough, even though it is the highest of anybody at the position outside of Damian Lillard, just because of how much upside he has at that salary. If he gets 30 minutes again, he's going to crush that price point.
Yeah, his ability to contribute in so many different ways, 1.25 fantasy points per minute on the year. Like, he's also, if you add up his usage and assist rate, he's basically taking 61 possessions per game, or 61% of possessions when he's on the floor is basically the best way to look at it. So against Milwaukee, I think there's a lot of room here for to get there. And that's why we're spending a little more time on this game. Guys, make sure you hit that like button if you're just tuning in or if you're skipping around. And again, stay tuned after us, Live Before Lock coming up with EMac and Terry. So they'll take you through whatever news hopefully breaks and makes their lineup is very difficult to complete. That's what we root for when we're not doing a show, because Greg and I are very supportive of our peers here on the Awesemo YouTube channel. Next game, Portland, 115.8 implied points. Chicago, a favorite here, 117.8 implied points. This game, Greg, we talked about it a little bit here. Damian Lillard theoretically should be benefiting more as he has in the past with no CJ McCollum. This game, we're also expecting no Derek Jones after he hurt his foot last game. Carmelo Anthony, to me, I think actually might be more appealing on a projection basis than Lillard. I think for tournaments, Lillard's the guy you're going to want. Melo with like a 25% usage rate in court time with no McCollum, going against the Bulls who don't defend well, who play fast. I think Melo is a good play, but I do think I would favor Giannis over Lillard, even though I certainly won't be mad at any Lillard I would get. But Greg, you tell me, what do you feel about as the best plays here on Portland's side?
So something else that happened right as we were talking about the last game, news came out that Robert Covington is going to play tonight. So I don't have Melo starting for the Blazers. I think it's going to be Lillard, Gary Trent, Covington, Cantor, and or would I have Melo starting? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, Melo would be, I think, be starting because we're like Derek Jones is still out.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I forgot about Derek Jones. So yeah, all right. So I think the starting five then will be Lillard, Cantor, Melo, Gary Trent, Covington. I was thinking that Covington would start over Melo, but I forgot that Derek Jones is out now too. So this could be a really tight rotation, actually, now that I'm just looking at the players they have available. So outside of the starting five, they have Anthony Simons, Harry Giles, Rodney Hood. I guess Nasir Little could play like 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to be a lot of those starting guys. So I think it is pretty hard to get away from all of them, other than maybe Gary Trent. I think that he's kind of appropriately priced. He shot the lights out last game, but I think that's going to regress a little bit. Covington, I think, is a good play. Melo, I agree with you. I think he's a strong play. Lillard, a stronger play on FanDuel than DraftKings, but viable on both sites. And I think Cantor's one of the best center plays on the slate also. There's not a lot of places for them to go to with the amount of guys they have out.
Yeah, and it's, again, a very easy matchup. I think one thing, though, that I'm curious your thoughts about with Covington. So Awesemo had him at 33 minutes. Covington coming off of concussion issues, the concussion protocol. I don't think he gets to 33. I feel a little safer getting him to 28, getting Anthony Simons also to 28, which we saw last game. Simons did play alongside these guys when Jones went out. So I think Simons, they're willing to go small. And against Chicago, I don't know why you wouldn't be willing to go small. Really not any threats, if you did put Simons alongside Lillard and Trent out there. But how do you feel about Covington's minutes? Because I think there's a really big difference to them. If you put him in for 33, he looks fantastic. If you put him in for 28, I think he gets mostly avoided. So I'm curious how you're feeling about Covington coming off this concussion.
Yeah, I think he plays over 30 minutes still. I think there's a little bit of variability there because he's coming off the concussion, but they only have so many guys that are active. And I think that I think a lot of those minutes are probably going to have to go to Robert Covington. He's also still one of the best players on this team, right? I mean, if you look at the players they have available, I would consider him to be the second best player on the active roster. Damian Lillard obviously won, and I'd have Covington too. Enes Kanter's a good fantasy producer. Carmelo's been a good fantasy producer now, but he doesn't contribute on the defensive end. Enes Kanter doesn't contribute on the defensive end. Of the players that are available for them, Robert Covington is the second best. And Portland's in a situation now where they're kind of a fringe playoff team. They're really struggling right now. And as referenced, they're underdogs playing against the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls suck. So, I mean, that really says a lot about where this team is right now. They need to win games. And as long as Robert Covington, he's playing, he passed the concussion protocol. So unless we find out that he's going to play restricted minutes, I'm assuming a full workload for him.
Okay, I think that's fair. To me, I just know if I'm getting a lot of a guy, I do sort of either trim the minutes or the rates a little bit. And for me with Covington, I was getting an impossible amount of him, and now I think I'm going to get to a reasonable amount. But I just don't want to get above the field. I feel like, again, a 5-minute difference could be really huge for him, and could also maybe put Anthony Simons into playable territory, but I think not one that I'm huge on. What about the bull side for you, Greg? Because really none of these guys jump out to me as of particular value on DraftKings. Maybe Gafford, just given that he's been getting the starter run, theoretically not closing games. I've been seeing more Lauri Markkanen going in and handling the closing parts of this at the 5, though. Maybe that changes today. I don't really know, but I do feel like at his price, I don't mind getting a little bit of Gafford. I'm not sure that I will, but minimum salary for a guy who's getting at least maybe 18 minutes, I don't think it's a crazy play to go here.
I'm not really getting to Gafford. I'm getting to a little bit of Levine, but less so than I thought I was going to earlier. The main reason is because I kind of wanted to group Levine with Damian Lillard earlier in the day, thinking I was going to get to a ton of Lillard. And this is going to be a little different on DraftKings than FanDuel. So on FanDuel, where I'm getting to more of Lillard, I'm also getting to more of Levine because I think the two of them group well together. Because if it is a game that's as high scoring as the total suggests, it doesn't get there unless Lillard and Levine both have good games because they're so responsible for everything that both these teams do. Both these guys could play close to 40 minutes and are going to carry massive usage rates. So if this is a really high scoring game, I like the correlation between Levine and Lillard because I think there's a pretty good chance they kind of shoot out and go back and forth against each other. But that's more of a FanDuel play than DraftKings because we have Levine at 9,000 on FanDuel and Damian Lillard at 9,700 on FanDuel. So it's a little easier to pair them together than it is on DK, where Lillard's priced over 10,000.
If for a tournament, I don't hate on DraftKings either, trying to get to Lillard and Levine. I think especially if you're hand building, you're trying to massage some optimized lineups with Fantasy Cruncher. I think that's one way to go. And the duel, between guys who have very obvious usage rates is always an interesting play. Just one that I think, to me, these guys both look appropriately owned on DraftKings, 17% for about each of them. And the ownership projections are free today, so check them out on the site. Check the top tab on Awesemo if you want to see where they are. Let's go to the next game. Sacramento here, 110.5 implied total at Miami, a 114.5 implied total. And we just got the news before, I guess, while doing this game or doing the last game, Jimmy Butler is going to be a no minutes limit for him. But I'll give you the floor, Greg, because I thought you raised an interesting point on one of the shows I was watching you on that we weren't doing together, talking about Butler and how he's looked. And he does seem like there may be some physical changes here that could be a cause for concern with his minutes load.
Yeah, so Jimmy Butler coming off COVID, apparently he was fairly significantly sick. There was a report that came out that he lost 12 pounds in a week, and he's still trying to get his conditioning back up to par and get some of the weight back on. I don't think he's going to look great right out of the gate, and that's very speculative because we've seen a wide range of outcomes with athletes that came back from COVID. If we look at NFL, for example, Lamar Jackson missed time, came back, and had his best fantasy game of the season when he came back. Cam Newton had a great start to the season, tested positive for COVID, came back, and basically sucked the rest of the year. It could be, it's hard to know. Is it causation? Is there a correlation there? Is it coincidence? It's hard to know, except I definitely think that it stands to reason that there's some athletes who it's affected more than others. And there's definitely ones who their production has been hampered by getting sick. And given some of the actual physical changes we've seen in Jimmy Butler here, it's no joke to lose 12 pounds in a week. There's clearly something wrong when that's the case. So to me, I look at what's going on with Miami, and now this is a team that I just want to avoid. They have all these guys in, Jimmy Butler back, Tyler Hero back, Iguodala's in, Gabe Vincent's in. The only guys who really remain out are, Dragic and Avery Bradley. While Dragic is a key piece of the offense, Jimmy Butler coming in is he's going to take up more usage than Dragic did, and Tyler Hero had missed some time, and he's back from a neck injury. So I don't know what to make of the Heat. I'm fine with just avoiding them. I don't think there's a substantial amount of upside in targeting them at their prices right now.
I think so here are the guys that I would make a case for. I think Duncan Robinson in particular is kind of interesting here going against Sacramento, who defensive efficiency rating, one way you could tell how much a team has given up. They have a 116.3 defensive efficiency rating. So they're giving up about 116 points on every 100 possessions, the worst mark in the league. But they're giving up 40% shooting from deep, which is also the worst mark in the league. And to me, that's where Duncan Robinson could have the outlier day, given that he shoots 8.5 3-pointers a game. He's really the one to me who could actually benefit from having Butler out there. His use rate actually gets a little bit higher with Butler as opposed to having Hero or Dragic out there. Butler, certainly a little more of a selfless player. You can set him up, I think. So to me, Duncan's not unowned on DraftKings, but I think I'll have at least with the field on him. I think we're going to have him about 8%. To me, I feel like I want to get above the field a little bit if I can actually with Duncan, just because of the spot and the matchup against Sacramento here. But Greg, anybody else, Bam, I feel like you could still maybe make a case for, but I don't really, at his price on DraftKings, I don't see getting there. But on FanDuel, is Bam a play, or is anybody here more of a play on FanDuel to you?
No, and the other thing too is, his price has gone up so much from when those guys were out. Bam Adebayo at 9,200 on FanDuel, that's a really steep price. He started the year priced at 8,500, and he's gone up a little bit, obviously, to the 9,200 now. And he didn't play. He played well when he was starting to get priced up, but not enough that I think warrants the price tag. So the last 3 games, for example, 45 fantasy points, 30 fantasy points, 44. You won't be mad if you watch somebody at 9,200 scores 44 fantasy points, but I don't know if there's enough ceiling there to really get him there at that kind of price point. I'd rather just try to pay up for Giannis or pay up for somebody like Lillard, or there's other power forward options that I think are higher priorities for me than Bam Adebayo. Now that we know all these guys are in, it sucks not targeting Sacramento because they have the worst defense efficiency in the entire league. They've been one of the best matchups for fantasy production going up against them. But still, there's just so many unknowns with the Miami situation. And this is the opposite of what we look for in pricing value. We have high usage players coming back into the lineup with other guys priced up already. So in general, that's something I look to avoid.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think some good points there. Miami, a team getting more usage back in their lineups, I think is never a good spot with the prices sort of reflecting on where these guys were without Jimmy Butler, without Dragic in the most recent couple of games, without Hero for a while. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I landed with it too. Sacramento side, I think still in play though. Buddy Hield, his price seems a little bit too low to me. Tyrese Halliburton was a guy that I was fortunately above the field on, who's ended up being a very strong play yesterday, who now seems to be closing some games at least over Marvin Bagley. Adam talked about that at some length this morning on the strategy show with Jason Floyd. So make sure you're watching those too on the Saturdays to get a read on the slate before hopefully things don't change too much later in the day. But I think there are some kings I would go to here. I don't love the matchup against Miami generally, but the price on Hield, the price on Halliburton, and even Hassan Whiteside, people love a good old-fashioned revenge game. Whiteside had a nice run of minutes yesterday, had the fantasy performance you want to see from him in a short burst of time. I think you can go to these guys. I don't know that I'll be there a ton. Halliburton in particular feels kind of chasey here, even though he's been pretty solid on the year. But what are you getting from Sacramento, if anything?
I'm getting to Halliburton, and I think there's just a material change in his situation. Now, like you said, he's closing games now, and Marvin Bagley struggled so much this year that they're just going to play smaller lines. That and Halliburton's so much better than Bagley. So Halliburton, his minutes had waned a little bit, but now they're back up with him closing games. He's played over 30 minutes in 3 consecutive games. He played 33 minutes yesterday, which was a season high for him. So I think what we've seen from Halliburton's minutes is all positive, and his price remains cheap. He's $4,900 on both DraftKings and FanDuel. It's too cheap of a price considering how well he's played when he's on the court. The only concern we've had over the last couple of weeks has been his playing time, and that seems to be less of a concern now that they're getting away from Marvin Bagley a little bit.
Our Jordan Klein here, aka Big Hero 6, what all his pals call him, asking if that's a normal size beer bottle. And it actually is a larger than average one. So no, I did not shrink here. It's on a Honey, I Shrunk the Kid situation. It is in fact just rather large.
Yeah, it's just Spags' really tiny hands. That's what this is for.
They're like little claws. They're like actually the claws in the carnival game where you just dip in there and hopefully you emerge with a stuffed Pikachu and you can bring it home and show off to the girl that you're dating.
By the way, so my sister's in college and I've done this thing which is really dumb. I take miniature water bottles and I'll hold them where like my hand is cuffing the entire thing. I'll be like, when you were gone at school, my hands got really big. This is a full size water bottle. And she does not think it's funny, but I'll continually, I don't stop doing it.
Elephantitis of the hands is a serious condition, Greg, and one that we should not make fun of. There's going to be some elephantitis handed person angrily hitting the dislike button now. Sorry to all of our elephantine friends out there. Let's keep moving here, and a good time to say go check out SuperDraft. Make sure you're playing at superdraft.io or downloading SuperDraft in the App Store. They're helping us put on this show. The Deeper Dive on Saturdays exists solely because SuperDraft is willing to step in and sponsor it. So make sure you're playing on there. They have the NBA, NFL, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, MMA, all the sports you want on there with a multiplier format where you can pick any players you want. You can put all the stars in. You could also take the guys who are big value plays on SuperDraft. Today, some of the top ones, according to Awesemo's projections, Enes Kanter, 1.85x multiplier, looks like a very solid play. They steadfastly refuse to change Jeremy Grant's situation on SuperDraft, a 1.6x multiplier for him. He also looks particularly strong. Damian Lillard, 1.15x, not what you're normally seeing for a star player like him. So they're just some of the top plays today on SuperDraft. So play at superdraft.io or download SuperDraft in the App Store. Next game up, Houston, a 112 implied total. New Orleans on the other side, a 111 implied total. Game should be competitive, but I have to say, I don't see anything I like from Houston's side. I just feel like the prices, don't jump out in a meaningful way. John Wall, maybe you can make a case for, but at his ownership, I just don't think I'm going to be there with the field. Christian Wood, Oladipo, Wall showed they all can get there in a game last time out, which I think is helpful. DeMarcus Cousins, probably not so much. He's too expensive, but Greg, are you getting any Rockets exposure at all against the New Orleans team that, it's worth noting, does play slower this year than they did last year?
Yeah, I'm getting to a little bit of John Wall, and I do think that just you kind of look across the industry, I think people might be underrating the amount of minutes John Wall could play in this spot because he's had limited minutes the last few games, except they've been trending up. So he played the last three games, 21 minutes, 24, and 30 minutes. So I just kind of look at that trend, and I assume he gets a full allotment of minutes today. I don't think there's any reason to think he plays below 30, and that kind of seems, I'm seeing a lot of people kind of give him like 30, 29, 28 minutes. his minutes have gone up each of the last 3 games. He played 30 last game. So I assume that he's going to play a full workload. And if that's the case, I think he's underpriced. And even though the ownership isn't 0, it's been creeping up a little bit. Earlier in the day when I was writing about the game, he was under 10% on FanDuel and DraftKings. That's not the price. That's not the case anymore. But I think that if he was to really just destroy his price point and play 33, 34 minutes, that's not a surprise either. So he's somebody who's going to be in my player pool and is also not all that popular of a play. He's the only guy of interest from on the Houston side.
Yeah, I think on DraftKings, projection-wise, Wall looks good. It wouldn't surprise me if I got a little bit of Oladipo just because of his price point. And also the fact he's only going to be 5% owned. But yeah, for the most part, to me, Houston, I would like to see them get slightly better prices on some of these guys to feel comfortable getting there in any sort of major volume. But I agree, John Wall, if you are to make the case for anybody to have some ownership, it's probably John Wall. The New Orleans side, though, I think you can make a case for a lot of guys. Zion, his price on DraftKings looks really strong, cheaper than Jeremy Grant, cheaper than some other guys who would be considered a peer projection-wise. But to me, the play I may have the most of is going to, I think, be Steven Adams just because of the size on the other side. Adams, not a high usage guy, but he makes a lot of lineups work from what I'm seeing so far. Depends how the ownership looks, but I think Lonzo Ball, I don't hate going back to either. Bledsoe, I think he'd actually make a case for enough of these guys. Adams, just one I know from my early crunches, was popping up a lot. What do you see looks most appealing to you from New Orleans with, I think, mostly reasonable prices across the board?
Yeah, so on FanDuel, I like the 5,200 price tag on Steven Adams for sure. On DraftKings, I like the depressed price for Lonzo Ball. Maybe a little bit of concern that Lonzo Ball is playing on the tail end of a back-to-back. He played 35 minutes yesterday. He's dealt with ankle injuries, dealt with knee injuries this year. So I tried to dial back his minutes a little bit, but he played 35 minutes yesterday and he hit 1 million shots. So I think that the price is too cheap for him. Even if we say that he only plays 30 minutes, the price still looks good for him. Zion at 7,400, I don't understand that price at all. He's scored over 40 fantasy points in almost every single game so far this year, and DK nerfed his price to be the lowest point of the year. And also, Houston on paper should be a very favorable matchup for him. Christian Wood is abysmal as a defensive player. When he comes off the court and DeMarcus Cousins is in, Zion's much too quick for DeMarcus Cousins. So I think no matter who Zion's going to end up matching up with, I mean, they're going to put PJ Tucker on him. I mean, good luck with that. He's so much bigger than PJ Tucker. I get the PJ Tucker's strong, but I just don't understand why DraftKings nerfed the price on Zion so much. He's 8,400 on FanDuel. I think that's more of an appropriate price, and you don't have to play him there. But the 7,400 on DK, I think that he absolutely has to be in your player pool.
Yeah, I think he's someone to watch the ownership on, though, because right now at 22%, I think I'm with you on it. I think he looks fine. But if he is somebody that starts to climb higher because, a lot of people in the industry today, whatever industry there is on the weekends, us at Awesemo, we are grinding a lot of shows, but sometimes there's a little bit less chatter going on that can really force ownership fluctuations on a Saturday NBA slate. But Zion at his price point, I agree. Like, I think he looks good, but I think he looks good at 20%. I think he's going to look less good if he starts to get to 50, 60. I don't know that I want to chalk Zion because I think you maybe move away to some other directions there. Are you willing to chase Lonzo as well? Because he's going to be projected for higher ownership than Zion. And I think he's one that people may see the game yesterday where Milwaukee, again, let him shoot. Him and Eric Bledsoe shot a lot of threes in that game they might not normally take. I think Lonzo looks fine here, but he's another guy I'm a little bit suspicious about the ownership coming up a little bit too much as we get closer to live before lock.
Yeah, and it's another one. So on FanDuel, where he's priced slightly higher, but only marginally, he's 5,400 on FanDuel versus 5,000 on DraftKings. But I guess because of the lack of positional flexibility, he's only projected for 10% ownership on FanDuel. So I think he's a good play on both sites, but at least relative to ownership, it doesn't look like we're going to have those same concerns. And one of the reasons also is because LaMelo is 5,200 on FanDuel and Lonzo is 5,400. So it looks like more people are going to the younger ball brother, which also makes sense on FanDuel. But for the 10% ownership, I think that's a good rate on Lonzo. But then even the DraftKings price, it's just too cheap to me. The 5,000, it's impossible to not project him well, for me at least. Even if I give him 26 minutes, he's still going to come up as a good value play. And I think he plays more than 26 minutes. So it's hard for me to get away from somebody, regardless of what the ownership is, when I haven't projected that well. And it's not like he's going to get to 50 or 60% ownership or anything like that. If that was the case, I would rethink it. But since I don't think that's going to be the case, I don't have an issue with his price or what the ownership is going to be.
Also, one bit of news that changes Portland a little bit. Nasir Little starting in place of Derek Jones Jr. tonight. So I guess Covington stays off the bench, which should, to me, I think, take Covington out of consideration, assuming that is the way that it goes.
Unless is Covington Is Melo starting or is Covington starting?
That's the part we don't know yet, but we just know that Little is starting in lieu of whoever. Like, it's not going to be Covington and Carmelo together.
Interesting. So yeah, I think whichever of Covington or Melo starts is going to make for the stronger play. But both of them are weaker now because Nasir Little, when we were talking about the Blazers before, I said I think Nasir Little probably soaks up like 5 to 10 minutes. That's not the case anymore now that he's starting. Now we know that he's going to play maybe not 30 minutes, but he's probably going to play in the neighborhood of 22 to 26 minutes at least, with upside for more. And that's going to come directly from Carmelo Anthony and Robert Covington.
And Little wouldn't be a play for you, right? I feel like we just have to say that because even at his price, I don't see Nasir Little having enough usage, whether he be, I guess if he's starting alongside Covington, I think a little bit more maybe might be interesting, but still not a lot. But again, if he's starting alongside Carmelo, I don't see Nasir Little popping up for me at all.
Yeah, so Little, let me see what his rates are this year. I mean, he's played so little this year off the top of my head. I can't remember him playing much at all. He's averaging 8 minutes per game this year and scoring 4 fantasy points. So that's pretty low per minute production. You'd have to give him, at those rates, you'd have to give him 30 minutes for him to really be a viable play. So it doesn't look like he's going to be coming up for me.
And one little super chat we got here, which we can address fast. We're going game by game here, so we don't have a ton of time to take questions, so we get everything in before the Live Before Lock guys come on. But Fear Loathing in NYC asking Javon Carter a good play tonight. We've seen him have some upside in games recently with no campaign. Devin Booker still out, but to me, I don't see him being cheap enough to get there. Greg, any quick Javon Carter thoughts before we move on?
He was literally not in the rotation last game.
Yeah,
he didn't come in until garbage time. It was really funny too because he was surprisingly a marginally chalk play on that slate. Like he was somewhere between 20 to 30% in most DraftKings GPPs, and everybody was rooting for him to come in the game and get garbage time. And then he airballed the 3, he turned the ball over, then bricked another 3. So he had negative fantasy points, and then he got stat corrected. They just randomly took his turnover away and gave him an offensive rebound. He should have had negative fantasy points that game, which I thought would have been really funny. People rooting for a chalk play to come in the game in garbage time, and then he scores negative fantasy points. But he was gifted 1.25 DraftKings points by a very, very generous score.
And here's a tweet in the premium Slack, which is part of that Awesemo Plus membership at awesemo.com/join. One of the many features here that are going to be helpful for you, and good community on there. In addition to actual news coming from our boy, the News God, who you can follow at NewsGod with a Z _DFS on Twitter. Steven Silas says DeMarcus Cousins will be critical tonight to help match the physicality of Steven Adams. Greg, I have to ask, do you think that means that there's any more minutes for Cousins, or is it just more coach speak, which Steven Silas really, for a rookie coach or a guy start having his first full-time hired job, really given a lot of coach speak in ways where he doesn't often follow through?
Well, here's one of the issues with Cousins. He's still kind of priced up from the time that Christian Wood was out. So DeMarcus Cousins is 6,500 on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, he is at 6,800. So yeah, maybe he plays a few extra minutes, but not in a way that's going to make him anywhere close to a viable DFS option.
Yep, I think that's the way that I would look at it too. Let's keep going here. We got about 20 minutes left and a few more games to hit on. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Get the like button up nice and high. The like total here nice and high, because we don't have anything to give away from you, but we do have some free ownership projections today, so that's a little bit gratis for you guys. So pay it forward there. Hit that like button and show Terry and EMac some love when they come on here, so they'll feel good, and they'll also know that they can't possibly get any more likes than me and Greg can, because we're the real stars on this show, and they know that. I think they know that. Let's keep talking about these games. Memphis, a 108.5 implied total. San Antonio, a 111.5 implied total on their side. Memphis, their first game, as Greg pointed out before we came on the air to me, because I was just looking at the popcorn machine and didn't even internalize that. They have not played in 12 days. The last time we saw them play, Xavier Tillman got a bunch of minutes. Jonas Valanciunas is still sidelined for health protocols. It's kind of surprisingly, Tillman, I think, got minutes over Gorgie Jang, but I guess that's the way that we're expecting it to go today. And as a result, Xavier Tillman, the chalk play of the slate as value, 0.92 fantasy point per minute guy this year, I think looks fine, but I think maybe somebody I'm going to end up moving away from a little bit in some of the higher dollar stuff. But Greg, you tell me, let's talk Xavier Tillman right away. Is he a guy that you're willing to match the field on, given that he's projected for north of 50% ownership on DraftKings?
Yeah, last game he started, he played 29 minutes despite foul trouble. Now, this is assuming Tillman starts. Like you said, we haven't seen this team play in 2 weeks. And I was saying before, we were talking about this game before, I was looking at the Western Conference standings, like, oh yeah, the Grizzlies. I forgot about them. They haven't played in a while. And I knew they were dealing with COVID stuff, but then you kind of, you look at their schedule, it's like, oh, they haven't played in 2 weeks. And this is such an unprecedented situation. We don't know what the starting lineup's going to look like. Are they going to make changes? Is Tillman going to start? Is somebody else going to start? We still know Jonas Valanciunas remains out. Grayson Allen remains out. Those are the two guys who are still in the COVID protocol. Everybody else, though, is going to be active for them. And I just don't know what to make of their rotation or who's going to play significant minutes. So I assume Tillman starts and is a good value play, but I'm not 100% confident Tillman starts. It's also something we don't have to really worry about at the moment because we still have an hour and a half until lock. So we're going to get the starting lineup at some point. We don't have to decide right now, like for sure set in stone what the Grizzlies starting lineup is. I also think that we're not going to see these guys play their full allotment of minutes. I think there's a pretty good chance that we see some guys who normally play 35, 34 minutes per game play 31 or 32. Still a healthy amount of minutes, but who knows what the conditioning is like for guys who haven't played an NBA game in 2 weeks. So I have a lot of concerns here, and there's a lot of chalk here also. John Morant is projected for over 20% ownership. I see the upside in him at 7,100, but I don't know if he's going to play 35 or 36 minutes. So I'm going to have him, I think, in my player pool, but I'm going to be underweight to the field on him just because I have reservations about the playing time for a team that has not played in so long.
Yeah, I think those are fair concerns. I think the one guy, well, actually, I'm willing to match the field on Brandon Clark. I think that's one that I would maybe not put away separately, but I do think deserves some more consideration here. I think if anything, he's sort of the safer part here to benefit from the lack of Jonas Valanciunas in there. Like Xavier Tillman can get there, but he's not a high rebound rate guy. He's sort of a guy that does a little bit in every category. Whereas Clark, we've seen actually play some meaningful center minutes, kind of show a little bit more upside. In addition to having the usage normally be around a 20% rate this year, can get a little bit higher. So to me, I think Clark is the play that I feel safest with, and I'm curious actually how the ownership looks because I want to get more of him, but if he's going to be 20%, I feel like just being with the field makes sense. Same thing for Ja for me. I think probably more of an argument to get there and hope that he has a lot of usage even if he does play 33 minutes. But I agree, for tournaments, you're maybe capping your ceiling a little bit with these guys. So there's some cause for concern just overall. We don't know what the precedent is for a team not playing in this long. San Antonio side, though, Greg, I think looks pretty good too. DeMar DeRozan yesterday was a very solid play. His ownership is going to be up today. DeJounte Murray, we're going to have Derek White back in the rotation, so maybe a little bit of cause for concern for him, but he looks pretty reasonably priced to me. So does LaMarcus Aldridge. Keldon Johnson, the very popular play everybody's asking about yesterday, I think probably the least appealing, but still at his price point and the positions, I think I could see getting the sum of him. San Antonio, how do you feel about them? And is there a guy who really stands out for you?
So on the other side, with the Memphis players, we don't know how they're going to look after a time off. If they're out of sync, they might really struggle on defense after so much time off. It's not like they were world beaters on defense before this. They were one of the easier teams to score fantasy points against last year. So I think there's a case to be made this could end up being a really favorable matchup for the Spurs. DeJounte Murray on DraftKings, I think, is a good play, less so on FanDuel where he's priced appropriately at 7,000. DraftKings, for some reason, there's some kind of vendetta against Murray where they're like, hey, this guy, we're not going to price him up anymore for no reason whatsoever. He had a triple-double, and they nerfed his price by $1,000 the next slate, which didn't really make a lot of sense, and it's never gone up since then. So Murray's more of a DraftKings-specific play. DeMar DeRozan, I think, is one of the best shooting guard plays on FanDuel. He's a good play on DraftKings as well. LaMarcus Aldridge, not somebody I'm really getting to right now. The rebound rate has just been so low for me this year that he's so dependent on scoring that I'm not really interested in him. Keldon Johnson, to me, kind of a secondary option, not somebody I'm going out of my way to target, but he's just going to appear in probably 10 to 15% of lineups. But to me, the real priority plays here, it's DeMar DeRozan on FanDuel and DeJounte Murray on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a little bit less bullish on Murray because of the ownership, but DeMar DeRozan, I think, will be one of my core plays today. I'm assuming things don't get too crazy here. And watch those ownership projections, which, again, are free. So you'll see some updates come throughout both the next show and just leading up to lock. They get more accurate as they go. That's what we always say. The next game, the Lakers and Boston, the expectation is we're going to have Anthony Davis back for this game, though one to watch as well because I think he's still technically marked questionable. But LeBron, his price is up a little bit. Certainly a better play usage-wise, at least with Anthony Davis out. Dennis Schroeder overall in this game, I think the only play that I find priced appropriately with what I expect of the opportunity here on either the Lakers side or Boston. But Greg, do you have any strong takes here on Lakers Boston? Because I think this is one of those that a good real life game, but everybody seems priced appropriately. There's no injuries really, assuming that Davis is in. So I don't see the need to get a lot here.
Yeah, I don't have anybody from either side of this game in my player pool right now. I have Anthony Davis in. I'm not as confident he plays as other times I've seen Lakers guys listed as questionable just because he missed last game. So I think we have to take the threat of him being listed questionable seriously. I think there's a chance he misses the game It is a little annoying though, because the Lakers list these guys as questionable every single game. So it's always the boy who cried wolf situation, because it's like, yeah, he's listed as questionable, but I mean, if we actually weigh this seriously every single slate, we're going to go crazy because they're always listed as questionable. But since he did miss last game, I think that there is more of an actual risk of him missing the game. If he's out, LeBron's in play, Kyle Kuzma's in play. If Anthony Davis plays, I'm fine with avoiding the Lakers side of the game. And the Celtics side of the game, it's kind of a similar situation. Jason Tatum's back from COVID. Kemba Walker's minutes are starting to trend up. So we have high usage guys who are being worked into the offense. And then we still have somebody like Jaylen Brown's really expensive. We have some of the other pieces on the Celtics, like Marcus Smart. He becomes a much lesser part of the offense with those other guys back. So I think from a DFS standpoint, this is pretty easily the weakest game on the slate.
Yeah, I no disagreement there. And I think let's just move on here because we got 2 more games to cover. You got to make sure you guys hit that like button here. We got EMac and Terry McBride coming up next. Some know him as Josh's dad. I don't know that that's ever been proven, but it's never been denied. And that's really the main thing to keep in mind for the next show. So watch those guys who do a great job. And we'll take you guys to lock while Greg and I kick back with our feet up and make our lineups comfortably. The next game, though, Phoenix, a 107.3 implied total. Dallas, a 108.3 implied total. And I think the Phoenix side, once again, no Devin Booker. Chris Paul, they do not want to price him up. He did have a bit of a down game last time out, but in this spot, his usage rate has been coming up a little bit more. His assist rate, about 43%, which is a nice jump from where he is normally with a Devin Booker, about a 35% assist rate so far this year. To me, I think that this spot for Paul looks really strong. He looks good to me. Jay Crowder, who's also seen a bit of a usage bump without Devin Booker. Really, all these guys have kind of seen a small uptick. Nobody taking a gigantic leap in usage. I think he's viable. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, kind of not popping up as much for me. DeAndre Ayton, I think, perennially kind of overvalued this year. He's not taking a big jump with usage with Devin Booker out. I don't think that's something that's going to change too much. What are you seeing here, Greg? Do you want Chris Paul? Are you into him as much as I am, or is somebody else on the Suns catching your eye?
No, I like Chris Paul. And the other thing to consider about last game, the reason that he didn't have a big fantasy game is he just didn't have to. I think that Chris Paul is one of the savvier, smarter players in the league. And this was the tail end of a back-to-back for Phoenix. They were just crushing the Warriors. It was never a competitive game. So Chris Paul was aware of that. He knew it was the tail end of a back-to-back. He kind of took it easy. Didn't have to play much in the second half. So only played 27 minutes, and his points per minute production was also a little bit lower just because it didn't have to be higher. He took his foot off the pedal and just kind of let the game happen around him. There was no reason for him to kill himself in that game. But you look at the 2 previous games where they lost to the Nuggets and the Thunder, and Chris Paul played 42 and 35 minutes in those games, a 33 and 26% usage rate, and really had to do everything for them. So in the last 3 games without Devin Booker, Chris Paul actually has 3 of his 4 highest usage rating games of the entire season. So I think you take that into consideration with the role that he's played, and also the spread for this game is really close. Last I looked, the Suns were 1-point underdogs playing against Dallas. So I think they're going to need another big game for Chris Paul. This isn't a back-to-back situation like the last game, and I think he bounces back and is a much better fantasy night.
Are you trying to chase Frank Kaminsky? Somebody in the YouTube chat asking Frank the Tank. I feel like people may be seeing the last game that he had going for 44 fantasy points, 19% usage, but a bit of a blowout aided situation for him there. Rebounds also exorbitantly high for what Frank normally does. He also had 8 assists in that game. So Frank really, to me, an outlier day here where he just somehow went off. But I guess if we're going to see no campaign, if we're going to see Javon Carter not in that second unit, maybe room for him to have some exposure. I don't know. Give me your feelings here, Greg, because I don't want to chase it. He doesn't project too well, but it does seem interesting that he would suddenly be playing so differently when there is sort of a lack of guys in that second unit.
So there's a reason that he had a big fantasy game. Number 1, he got to play almost the entire fourth quarter because of the blowout. And then number 2, Ayton got in foul trouble. So there was multiple factors there that led to Kaminsky playing extra minutes. The other thing also is Ayton got into foul trouble in the third quarter. They put Kaminsky in. They never put Ayton back in because the game was a blowout. So they just kind of left Kaminsky in for the rest of the game. That was the only time all season he scored over 20 fantasy points. So I understand it was a massive game. He scored 44 DraftKings points, but it was such a fluke. It was an outlier. Everything broke in his favor. There was a blowout. Ayton got into foul trouble, and all of that led to Kaminsky playing the bulk of the second half minutes. This game has a 1 point spread, and we have to assume it stays closer. Maybe Ayton gets into foul trouble. I don't predict that to happen, though. I don't think that's an especially likely scenario. So I think that we're more likely to see Kaminsky get back into like the 18-minute or so range, and it's going to be hard for him to have a big fantasy night in that kind of playing time.
Yeah, Awesemo has him at 13 minutes, and I agree. Like, I think there's no pathway to him to have a lot of minutes again. And yeah, the 8 in foul trouble is something I didn't think about, but yeah, that was something that would have led to Kaminsky getting a bit more. The rebound rate, the assist rate taking a jump. I think when you see a guy like Kaminsky, who is a veteran, playing alongside guys who really aren't that good in that blowout time, I think that's why you see the upside. So, and not something I'm dying to chase. And I think for the reason you mentioned with Chris Paul taking it easy, that does sort of lead a guy like Kaminsky to have some more opportunity to do more too. So yeah, I think to me, Kaminsky would be a guy to stay away from today. On the other side, we have Porzingis and Luka, I think being the two plays that are the most viable. The other guys, Richardson, Brunson, Dorian Finney-Smith, I don't see the need to get to them at all. But Luka kind of under owned because of some of the guys we talked about, the Lillards, the Giannis's, who is not resting today, but the Bucks put that news out, so we know for sure he'll be in. Are you getting to Luka against a Phoenix team that, at least on paper defensively, they play slow and they do defend fairly well relative to league average?
All right, so there's two things we have to look at here. First, do you think Porzingis is going to play?
That I don't know. I'm just looking at the minutes projection from Awesemo. So we've seen him play back-to-backs, but I know he's a rest candidate. So for now, I think you got to put him in and then, adjust Luka's rates accordingly if he's out.
So they listed Porzingis as questionable in the injury report with a knee injury, and he did sit the last back-to-back. He's played one back-to-back this year, and I think he sat two, if I remember correctly. So considering they listed him questionable in the injury report, I think there's a pretty good chance he sits. I hope he just plays because that makes it simpler. If he's out, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Luka's rates, actually, his fantasy production is about the same with Porzingis on or off the court. But the difference is that Luka does have a very high usage rate when Porzingis is off the court. And we also have seen some other guys who are out of the lineup for Dallas, like Maxi Kleber's out right now. So I think we could see Luka play extended minutes. The other thing also is Luka said himself after the game yesterday, he's really frustrated with them not winning games right now. And I think there's a chance if Porzingis is out, we just see a massively high usage rate for Luka Doncic because he knows the team is struggling right now. And this is a little bit narrative based, but still, if he's missing his other all-star in his roster, and he said himself that we have to start winning games, I'm frustrated right now. I would think that leads to him taking a bigger bulk of the shots than we would normally see from him. I could see him shouldering the load a little bit. So it gets tough for me if Porzingis is out because I like Lillard and Giannis more than Luka right now, but I'd have to reevaluate that if Porzingis is out and I expect a massive usage rate for Luka in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's one to watch for sure, and maybe one that will hopefully get the news over the next hour here as Terry and EMac take you guys through everything. But yeah, I'm with you on it right now. I think Luka, to me, would be my third preferred play behind Giannis and then behind Lillard as well. But I think if Porzingis is out, I think that takes an immediate jump for Luka for me. And honestly, maybe I get to a little bit more of these other secondary pieces, including Richardson, Brunson. Probably Richardson would be the one that would come up the most for me. But I don't really have a strong feel on it right now. So watch the news here and keep an eye on that one. And we are on our last game. And of course, there's no official money time, but Greg really demanded that we have one always for the last game on the deeper dive. So casual money time here.
Yes.
Thank you, Greg. You're learning now to come along with Money Time and all the fringe benefits that go along with it. And of course, Money Time today is sponsored by SuperDraft. So play over on SuperDraft. The multiplier format is fantastic. We gave you guys some of the top plays earlier. One of the top plays on SuperDraft today is going to be in this game for Detroit. Jeremy Grant, a guy 1.6x multiplier. SuperDraft doesn't want to change that, so take advantage of it. Play Jeremy Grant. But also use the promo code Awesemo21 on SuperDraft, and they will match your deposit up to $50. So that's $50 free in Super Cash. And check out their $1 million Super Bowl contest, one of the biggest ones they've ever done to celebrate some partnerships they have going on. So good money to be had over at SuperDraft. Play at superdraft.io or download SuperDraft in the App Store. This last game, Detroit a 109.8 implied total, Golden State a 113.8 implied total. And Detroit very feisty lately, staying in games, even winning games that you would think they wouldn't be too good in. Blake Griffin last time out. This actually might have been a show, Greg, where you're doing with Josh, where Josh was like, yeah, I love Blake Griffin today. And you're like, oh, no, Blake Griffin. And I ended up team Josh on that one and was terrified to because you know how Josh be, but Blake instead goes off. And to me, this is a spot I don't mind getting to Blake, but I think Jeremy Grant's the priority play for me. Blake, for whatever reason, I think the usage went up a little bit in that game. To me, I expect things to get back to normal for Jeremy Grant, but I do think Grant, Griffin, Mason Plumlee, all guys that I would consider, and Derrick Rose at his price point. The minutes are not fantastic right now, but certainly has the usage to have a nice day. So what are you seeing on Detroit's side? And do you have a preference here between, I guess, Grant and Griffin in particular?
Yeah, so I'm still a little curious what the actual talent level of Jeremy Grant is, because he started the year really well and his price went up, and I think just his points total at sportsbooks, he hit the over on his points prop 13 games in a row, and then I don't think he's hit it since then. He's been struggling a little bit with his shot, and I assume that his true talent level is probably somewhere in between where he started the year and where he's been the last handful of games, because his efficiency's been down as of late and he hasn't been playing quite as well. Not that we could have expected him to continue to be one of the higher usage guys playing with, ridiculous efficiency. But I also think there was a little bit of a correction just in terms of DFS and everything, where he went from a guy who had, point totals of, like 16 and a half, 17 and a half points to a guy who now on a lot of slates, if you want to bet his points prop at sportsbooks, you're laying like 24, 25 and a half points. His efficiency's gone down a little bit as of late. The usage rate's also gone down the last 3 games, 19%, 25%, 25% usage, compared to earlier in the year where he was a guy who was, in like the 28 to 30% range. The positive here is with him not playing quite as well as of late, his price has gone down on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So we could roster him for under 8,000. When his price was getting up to, like 84, 8,500, that was a little bit too much for me. At 7,800 now, he's not going to be a core play for me or anything like that, but I'm willing to get to around 10% of Jeremy Grant. I think that's what I had in my last run of lineups.
Today may be a heavy Jeremy Grant day for me just because of some of the ownership going to guys in this price range. And I'll put my claim in here in the hopes that he gets better. And for what it's worth, I'm giving him a 27.7 usage rate, which is a little bit up on what his 2021 averages so far in terms of usage. But that's sort of what he's been without Killian Hayes. I think Killian Hayes is one that sort of drove his numbers down earlier in the year. I'm going to trust in Grant today, but I think, having some exposure to the other guys, I think is fair. 1-2 that I think I'm going to have a good amount of because of the price point and because I do think another guy who sort of suffers from foul issues, but this seems like a nice spot. Mason Plumlee at 10% owned, I think kind of interesting and probably more of a DraftKings play than a FanDuel play. But Greg, maybe you disagree here. Do you have any Mason Plumlee room for you either on DraftKings or FanDuel?
I don't. I've been on Plumlee a lot over the last couple of games, but my last run of lineups, I don't have him on FanDuel and on DraftKings. Maybe I have him 5%. I don't know because my thing won't scroll down. I'm going to say I either don't have him on DraftKings or at most I have him 5% is probably where I have Plumlee. So it is noted that I don't expect him to continue to foul out. He had a stretch where he fouled out 4 games in a row. And one of those games, he was playing like 19 minutes. He's fouled out like aggressively quickly in some of these games. And it's been a little bit better as of late. But the price has also gone up a little bit because we saw in Plumlee, he was a guy whose price got down to like 4,400 on FanDuel and I think 4,500 on DraftKings or something like that. The price is a little bit higher than that now. It is a favorable matchup against the Warriors. But still, there's better center plays I prefer. I'd rather roster Cody Zeller around the same price point than Mason Plumlee. I have them projected about the same, and Zeller is cheaper, if I remember correctly. Plumlee is 5,400 compared to 4,500 for Zeller. So I prefer the salary savings that come with Cody Zeller, and it's not like Zeller is all that popular on DK right now either.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Actually, I had Plumlee a lot in an earlier crunch, and it seems like he came down for me in favor of Cody Zeller because of Zeller not picking up as much ownership. Maybe people afraid to chase after he had a bit of a down day. I think Plumlee's in the mix for me, but right now I probably would prefer Adams and Cody Zeller over him. So that's my update there. And thank you for making me catch that before I make people walk off a ledge with Mason Plumlee.
One more note on Cody Zeller. I mean, he scored 24 and a half DK points at 4,000 yesterday. It's not like that's a terrible outcome considering he was in foul trouble. Like, I think we have to consider that was probably close to a floor game for him because he played 8 minutes in the first half and still finishes with 24 and a half fantasy points. At a 4,000 price tag, that's not like it kills you. That's a fine outcome.
Yep, I think that's fair. The Golden State side, so I'm not getting Steph at all. I am getting, as you could tell, always a great night when you can go with the late night hammer. Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green are guys that I'm going to have a good amount of currently, it seems. But what are you getting from Golden State? Are you getting Steph, or are you with me and maybe wanted to take a bit of a discount, I think, on guys like Wiggins and Draymond?
I have not gotten to Steph with any regularity over the last few Warrior slates. And it was a thing that I was kind of nervous about going into the slates where I was like, I don't have Steph. What if he has a 50-point game? But there's always just this situation where like Damian Lillard is around the same price point as him on FanDuel. He's a little more expensive on DraftKings. But then there's just other guys I'd rather pay up for. I'd rather go up to Giannis. I'd rather go up to Lillard, even on DK at the higher price point. I'd rather get to Luka if Porzingis is out. So it just kind of leads to Steph Curry getting squeezed out of my lineups. Chris Paul also is cheaper on FanDuel and DraftKings. I think he's a better points per dollar play. So I just haven't been getting to Steph lately. It hasn't hurt me yet. It's going to hurt eventually. There's no way I could just continue to not have Steph Curry in my lineups, and there's not going to be a Steph Curry game where he just totally blows up. But just to make this short, because I know we're running out of time, it doesn't look like I'm going to get to Steph Curry.
Yeah, all right, so that's the slate, and we have Live Before Lock coming up next with EMac and Terry. Make sure you go playing on SuperDraft, superdraft.io, or download SuperDraft from the App Store and use the promo code Awesemo21 to get a deposit match up to $50 instantly in Super Cash. Go follow at G. Ehrenberg DFS, follow at Chris Spags, and stay tuned. Coming up next, EMac and Terry, so smash that like button and make those guys feel good. We'll see you guys again soon. Good luck. Later, guys. I see how Laffy always goes over now. Really.
What's up, fellas?
Hey, guys, enjoy. Hopefully, no crazy news for you.
Yeah, I feel
that's not what you were hoping on air. I heard you.
No, yeah. That was just a bit. That was just a bit for the people.
Sure. No, that was not a bit.
I hope you guys get hit by a tsunami of news. I hope EMac's computer shorts out, and that's everything I hope happens. Have a good night, guys.
All right, bye, guys.
Good stuff, boy. I'm terrified. We've gotten it's way too quiet out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got my placeholder lineups in.
Yeah, me too. I was running DK crunches. I took the dog for a walk. I mean, it's
yeah, I just remembered I needed to go feed the dog because this is dinner time right now.
You're gonna go live while you're doing jazz hands. You know that.
All right, Awesemo, here we are. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Saturday night, late slate. Well, it's the main slate, but it's an hour late. We've noticed some quirks in the schedule. I'm joined by T. McBee. Some would say he might be Josh's dad. We have not disproven that fact yet, so we're just going to let that ride. But we've got a big slate going on right now with 6 of our 8 games going off within the first 30 minutes of lock, and we are just waiting for the proverbial other shoe to drop. So there is a lot of information to cover. Fortunately, we now have the deeper dive on Saturdays as brought to you by SuperDraft. We'll talk a little bit about SuperDraft, but we're going to focus more on questions, reacting to the news that we have, a few different injury situations, and the pricing this year has been dramatically different across the different sites and with the SuperDraft multiplier. So not all players are created equal. Terry, are you ready to buckle in and have some fun here?
I am. It should be a good one. Like I was saying to you before we came on, I don't know if that one went out on the air or not, but I'm terrified right now because it is way, way too quiet out there. I know there's news coming. I just don't know where it's going to come from. I thought maybe like Portland would be late. I think, we're still waiting a little bit on AD news, but something's going to drop, like you said, and it's going to change everything on us. So should be fun.
Yeah. So in the meantime, a couple key things that we have. I'm going to drop this link into chat. This is for the Awesemo_com account. That's Awesemo_com. On that, you can get the links to our free content for today. It is the NBA ownership projections. So that's what's happening right now for the NBA coming up. We have the NHL top stacks. Now, NHL just locked, but you can take a look at those now and sort of see what they are. They're one of the more valuable tools that we have here with regards to NHL. Take a peek, see what's going on. There is a 2-game slate at 9 o'clock. I'm playing it because, hey, no slates off, Terry. And then also at 9 o'clock, tennis is back. We have the Melbourne Open, Melbourne Invitational, something in Melbourne. It's in Australia. I was trying to find the name of the tournament. Our guy Blaine messaged me and said, hey, can you tell him we got tennis projections? And it's going live right after the NBA lock. And I said, of course. So there we are with that.
Although if you're planning on showing up and playing, there's a big difference between an invitational and an open. So you might want to check that before you go.
Yes. I couldn't tell, and it was taking me to sites that were giving me pop-ups. So I said, I don't need to dabble in this by any stretch of the imagination. But there we are on that one. All right. So let's see. Working over here to the key things I want to talk about for us. We have a couple of interesting spots here. My first message to you today was, are you ready for
Xavier Tillman Day.
Xavier Tillman Day. I was looking at him and it's like, oh, Memphis. That's right. They have a team. Goodness, what's going on here? So the thing about Memphis that's going to be kind of interesting is we don't know everybody who had COVID. Dallas, we can kind of guess at most of the people that did. Miami, we can kind of guess at most of the people that did. Washington, we can kind of guess at most of the people did. Of course, the HIPAA laws, I can't remember, Health
Information Privacy and Protection
Privacy Act or whatever it is.
Something
That being in HR, I try to stay away from benefits, but that leave that
way too much time in that in my life.
Yeah, people that spend their time on that are experts. So what that means is the players don't have to announce with regards to their health status. So some of the players where we've seen missing for personal reasons that they haven't put on the COVID list have been on COVID or have had COVID. It's just a whole myriad of things. So we want to consider that. So when we get back to Memphis, I don't believe Tillman had it. I don't believe Brandon Clark had it. I don't believe Ja Morant had it. And we saw Ja Morant come back after missing a few games, slightly ramping up his time, and then he's had another 2 weeks to recover from his injury. How do you want to handle the Memphis situation? Intriguing game for them going against the Spurs. It is a back-to-back for the Spurs.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot. I mean, with all of those variables, it's a little bit tough to nail down exactly what this is going to look like from a minutes perspective. I mean, when they haven't played in that long, we just don't know if guys are going to be in game shape. We don't know exactly what the run's going to look like. So even a guy like Tillman, who looks like a super value on, particularly on DraftKings today, if he gets 22 minutes as opposed to the 28 that we've got him projected for, that can make a pretty strong difference for a guy who's going to need every minute on the court at his 1.01 fantasy points per minute of production. He only has a 3,500 salary on DK, so he doesn't have to do a ton to pay it off. But he's going to need to be out there for a fairly decent amount of time. So that concerns me a little bit. There's safety, I think, in a Ja Morant. Like you said, he had a little bit more time to rehab the injury that he had before the layoff, so that's a good thing. But again, we don't know completely where those minutes are going to go. I trust that he's going to get his usual run. So like him, Clark a little bit. I think those guys are a little bit reliable, but they're not seeing a dramatic discount. Ja's probably priced down a little bit from if he was playing the full season and at full health where he would be, normally at this point. He'd probably be in the mid eights somewhere, but we don't really know what we're going to get from him. So it's really tough to jump on any of these guys. Tillman is the one who's working his way naturally just via process into a lot of my lineups, a fair amount even on FanDuel at the higher price, and would certainly be in a dramatic amount of the lineups on FanDuel. The crunch that I ran before, he was basically double anybody else in the on DraftKings rather. So he is a key fundamental building block for the slate. I'm just nervous about it.
All right, so poking a little fun at us. Who was less prepared for the slate, you or I today? Neither one of us. We were writing our articles at 9:30 this morning and messaging each other about different players. So we've been on this thing all day. Of course, this is NBA 1 and 2. We're in the middle of a pandemic where everything changes. We have quite a few teams on back-to-backs tonight. That's something I do want to point out here. I have that on my list. So Milwaukee and Charlotte, both on back-to-backs. They're playing each other in the Queen City. New Orleans is on a back-to-back. Sacramento's on a back-to-back, as is the Spurs and Dallas. Nobody that's playing today is playing tomorrow. So that's important information to understand because we've got a few potential situations here with the Spurs. What are they going to do with LaMarcus Aldridge? I don't know for sure. Potentially Derek White is coming back. He's only played one game so far this season before he ended up fracturing his foot, and he's been out. DeJounte Murray, just amazingly priced on DraftKings. He is my second best play on Yahoo. He's in the mix on SuperDraft as well. And then you've got DeMar DeRozan also on those three sites that is very good. DeRozan helps you get rid of the small forward spot or the shooting guard spot, depending on the site that you're playing. So I think these guys are all good. I think Derek White coming back probably is going to nick his minutes away from, who do we think? Probably where's my notes here? It is going, in my opinion, it's going to be White will not start. He will come off the bench. It's not going to be Murray. It'll be a little bit from Patty Mills, and then I'm blanking on
from Vassell probably.
He was the interesting one guy. It was either going to be Vassell or Lonnie Walker the fourth.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense that Lonnie would.
And I think a couple minutes off of
Alex's minutes.
I didn't look at that. I just go straight off Alex's projections. But that's one more. How are we going to interpret that? It is a back-to-back, so I'm thinking, well, maybe that's a few less for Patty Mills, who's played a gazillion years. But the Spurs need to start banking wins. They're only 3.5-point favorites at home. They can't be screwing around. And this could be a nip and tuck game. So I like a lot of players here from the Spurs. The guy I'm concerned about the most, though, is LaMarcus Aldridge. He is playing just 27 and a half minutes per game. That's the fewest of his career since his rookie season. So the interesting thing about that is we were seeing the price dip. He's not the best rebounder on the team. He's kind of he's like an empty like wing player who just scores now. Could he reach back in a game like this and do something? Yes. Is the price low enough that 35 fantasy points for him is very nice? Yes. But what do you have the odds of him making more than 25 or 30 fantasy points? 1 in 3, 1 in 4, 1 in 5?
Yeah,
you're looking at the boom bust tool. I hope you're looking at the boom bust tool and you can tell us what
I was actually jumping over to my projections where I've got my target score. So just for FanDuel, right, I've got a 42.1 target score for him. I have him getting there off of my projection 5.4% of the time, off of Alex's projection, which is about a point higher, 6.99% of the time. So you're really not talking about a very reliable play. And those numbers kind of jibe with what he's been this year. You know, you talk about he's only playing 27 minutes a game. He's kind of earned that role or lost his job a little bit, lost his larger minute share. He's come down from a 1.12 fantasy point per minute producer last year to a 0.94 so far this year. The guys on the previous show, I think it was Adam maybe this morning. I watched all the shows today, so I'm losing track of who said what. But I think it was Adam was talking a little bit about just, you know, the rebounding that a guy like Keldon Johnson comes in and takes away some of the rebounding. That has a little bit of a nick on Aldridge. So that takes away some of his fantasy production. And he just hasn't been as good this year. So it is definitely an uncomfortable play. I'll probably get a little bit of him just because there's not a ton of people going to him. He's a guy at his salary. He doesn't, like you said, have to do a ton to hit that ceiling. You know, that 40-point score is definitely in range for LaMarcus Aldridge. It's just he's not getting there overly frequently. So I think he's a bit of a tournament play, but I wouldn't be getting to him, you know, much more than the field, or preferably probably less than the field.
All right, Corey Randall has a $5 super chat here for us. He would like to know DK single entry. Thank you for putting format and site.
Always important.
Keldon Johnson or Jay Crowder? I'm actually going to lean towards Jay Crowder on this one.
Interesting.
Do you have a strong preference? So kind of my revenge, right, for Crowder, because many moons ago he played for Dallas. Right. Take that out of the game. But he has been a little more steady of a player lately. I like him over Cam Johnson. And Cam Johnson, you know, disappointing chalk a couple times here on this slate. For me, going with Keldon Johnson, just haven't seen a ton from him. I tend to favor more of the veteran guys. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I got there with Bojan Bogdanovic after I fell asleep last night, had a very nice night in basketball. But for me, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Crowder. I think it's close. I think you're splitting hairs. But if I were only going to do one, for me, it would be Jay Crowder on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I was just trying to get them while we were talking to pop up on the same screen at the same time for me. I forgot that I had it sorted to the Memphis-San Antonio game, so I couldn't find them. So that's why I wasn't quick with the Crowder call. But just looking at where Alex has them, because I like to answer DK questions out of Alex's numbers since most of my stuff is geared toward FanDuel. It looks like the play would be Keldon, which was going to be my initial inclination. Just based on, you know, the optimal lineup appearance rate, you're basically looking at double. He's 12.6% of the time in the optimal, and Crowder's only 5.3. And you're gaining a little bit more on the leverage as well. Leverage score of 4.2 on Keldon and only 1.4 on Jay Crowder. You're working with lower overall ownership on Crowder. He's only going to be around, you know, let's call it 5-ish% owned. But that makes him about even as a leverage play, where Keldon's got a little bit better of a shot at being in the optimal lineup. So even though he's going to be owned a little bit more, around 8% in public lineups, his ability to be in the optimal is going to be giving you the better leverage play. So for me, that's a guy I've won with a little bit this year when he's hit. So I'll go with Keldon.
All right. And then to help sort of break the tie, because we're not really helping him with this answer since we've come on both sides, I like to usually play somewhere between 100 and 150 lineups. I have so many other Spurs. For me, I'm sort of diversifying away because I'm going to have a ton of DeJounte Murray, a ton of DeMar DeRozan, and then maybe a few of the other guys. Johnson is on the short list there, but that sort of has me going over to Crowder just a little bit for some diversification purposes. But
sure, not a bad way to look at it. And, also just something to think about, just, rotating them into different lineups, keep all those guys in your rotation. We're not saying take Keldon out of the player pool from that, but maybe, if you were playing more than one lineup person out there, maybe you rotate them through, don't play them together, things like that. I get a share of each of them to a certain degree.
All right. Did you read my article today? It's okay to say no, because I'm going to do a pop quiz and I will ask you the questions if you have not read the article.
I actually didn't get a chance to. I usually do, but I was doing some editing and some other stuff, so I didn't get a chance to that.
Perfect. So here we go. Pop quiz question number 1. In Zion's 16 games this season, how many times has he topped 45 DraftKings points?
0.
3 out of 16.
Okay.
The first 2 games and then the last game. So he went 13 straight without topping 45. So I said, this is eye-opening to say the least. He is 21st in the league with 23.8 points per game. He's shooting 58.7% from the field. That's the most of anybody taking at least 15 shot attempts per game. That's phenomenal. Here's the problem. He's averaging 7.6 rebounds. He's third on the team in rebounding rate behind Steven Adams at 17.9, behind Josh Hart at 15.1. He is at 12.6. While that's a little higher than his 11.9 last season, there's, the upside is missing there. How many three-pointers do you think, the pop quiz 2, how many three-pointers do you think Zion has made in his career? 40 games, 4-0. He had 4 in his first start ever. He was 4 for 4.
15. Or is it 4? 7? Okay.
7. He has made 3 in the last 39 games. So the other thing, while he's a good defensive presence, in his career, he's averaging just under half a block per game. So I point all this out because his price looks phenomenal on DraftKings. I think he's perfectly fine as a cash game play, but we're looking at someone who in his 40 career games has 50 fantasy points 3 times and more than 45 6 times. Just saying. Now, he's averaging almost 40 a game for his career. So he's consistently getting to that point. But where's our upside? That's the hard part. It could come out of nowhere, but I don't know how we predict that because we haven't seen it before. So I wanted to drill down on that one just a little bit, have some fun there. They're asking us, DeMar DeRozan, is he a lock? I think he's pretty close to a lock. You know what? I should do some cash games. Get us up to, where are we? Where are we on the likes here, Terry? Let's have some fun. We only have 650 likes? What the heck? Spags,
most of that was from the other show.
Spags not doing his job. Got to show us
some love out here, Those guys swiped all the likes. They kept them from themselves. So you guys got to help us out a little bit because we can't have that kind of a deficit.
Yeah, so let's get up to 800 and I'll drop 10 head-to-heads in there. I see someone messaging me that Zion is trash on defense. He is a presence. He is somebody that has to be accounted for. He's a big body, et cetera. But that doesn't, it's sort of like saying Robert Covington's a good defender. No, Robert Covington is good at defending passing lanes and deflecting the ball. That doesn't mean he's a good defender. In today's day and age, is there a lockdown defender really anymore? With the way basketball is and the way everybody makes the extra pass and kick outs and all that stuff. Things have evolved. So I would agree. Yeah, he's not awesome. But amongst the other guys is when you're staring at him as you're going into the lane as a guard, you're like, really? Do I have to deal with this guy?
It's just a wide body to even get around. I mean, in that situation, if you're driving the lane. So yeah, he's a presence under the rim for sure. So I mean, and it doesn't have a dramatic impact or a quantifiable impact really for a day-to-day DFS situation anyway. So it's a little bit difficult to look at, and it's all accounted for in all the rates and everything that we're looking at from the entire year. I agree with what you said about the overall upside. It's interesting. Like he's a guy who's going to come in right around where we've got him on that median projection, maybe a little bit below, maybe a little bit above. He's going to deliver. He looks like he's probably in play. This is Zion that I'm going back to. So I definitely think, he's in play. You mentioned the 40 games. I heard on, I think the Sports Center this morning, they said he's now the record holder, the highest field goal percentage over his first 40 games in NBA history. So he's got that going for him.
All right.
Yeah. On the DeRozan side of things, I definitely think he's very in play on both sites. Not a guy I'm ever really super comfortable going to. I just feel like I've gotten burnt by him a decent amount of the time. but looks very good. 1.17 fantasy point producer per minute this year, up a little bit from 1.14 last year. Getting a little bit of heavy ownership on FanDuel, negative 6.4 leverage in Alex's leverage score here, but excellent. He's going to be in a lot of the optimal lineups in our simulations. He's coming up with a very nice boom score, very solid median projection in both Alex's numbers and mine. So I like him there. And he's getting owned less over on DK. So I actually like the play better on DK, where you can kind of flex him around from small forward to power forward. He's a little bit cheaper and fewer people are going to him. So definitely give me more DeRozan over on DK. I don't think I would ever call him a lock, though.
All right. He was my play of the day on Yahoo. I'm going to drop the link to and by the way, we'll prepare for this because it's the next question. Porzingis is out.
Ooh.
Officially. So in chat,
the next question or not?
Yes. So while you're calibrating on that, I'm going to drop the link to the DFS building blocks. This is in chat. We have 4 articles that we put out each day. Of course, the crown jewel is the deep dive article that's written by Adam Scherer Monday through Friday, and then it's Greg takes over that for the weekend. 2 guys that live and breathe the basketball. Excellent look there. That's a free article that comes out in the evening. I write the first one of the day. It's called DFS Building Blocks. What I'm going to try to do is teach you something for each of those games. I also talk about good plays that are there on FanDuel or probably on SuperDraft and Yahoo discount dandies. And then I put in some core plays that I think are going to be good options. And then I say somebody who is maybe not bad chalk. It's hard to have bad chalk in the pandemic these days. When you have 8 games on the docket, you should not be playing players that you don't feel comfortable with. Right? There's just going to be other opportunities there. But like today, I wrote up Zion. I just wanted to say, hey, yeah, the price is coming down. It's either going to be him or LaMarcus Aldridge. It's like, oh my God, this price is great. And then you start digging into it. You're like, maybe perhaps it's not. But these are just things you can carry into the future. Terry writes something that comes off the Boom Bust tool. And then we have a rotating cast that writes something that comes off the Awesemo grades tool. So this is a different way to look at different stuff. And we write these in a variety of ways so you can get a look at different players, file this stuff away. So when insanity happens like it is right now, as we head into lock with 6 games going off in it between 8 and 8:30, you have something to draw from, and you don't have to wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. So Terry, Luka Doncic, angry Luka Doncic, called his team out, called himself out, was sad. He didn't look to be angry. He's not angry with everybody. He's just disappointed in them. Excellent parenting move there. What do we get from Luka Doncic tonight?
That was always the worst thing. So much worse. Just be angry at me. Please don't be disappointed. Yeah, I think this definitely vaults Luka up a little bit. He was already coming up a little for me, but he wasn't my top point guard by any means, just with the quality of the plays of Damian Lillard on the slate, of LaMelo Ball, of Chris Paul out there. So I wasn't getting a ton of them. I'll be curious to see the impact it has in actual Cruncher. I'm just getting the numbers updated, but it's going to have an impact to Luka just in terms of he's going to have to do more on the court. Might ding him a little bit from having a very reliable wingman to dish the ball off to on the assist rate and things like that. But it's a little bit tricky to say. I don't have the assist rate in front of me and the differential when he's playing next to KP. But overall, I think it's a bit of a plus for Luka in terms of just he's going to be the focal point more and more of the offense. And like you said, he's going to be playing pissed off. So for the people who like narratives out there, hey, I hope this pisses him off even more and he starts trying to force his way to New York and finally join my Knicks.
the reverse. He's going to show Kristaps Porzingis how it could have been, right?
I was talking to all my Knicks fan friends that draft, like, all right, if they pass on him and then they pass on him, maybe we could trade up here. Blah, blah, blah.
All right. With this season, with Porzingis, he has an assist rate of Luka does of 57.7%. That's pretty impressive. This is courtesy of Add More Funds. With Kristaps Porzingis off the court, I don't know that it's going to change that much. Oh, it actually goes down 45%. However, his usage goes up a little bit. His rebounding numbers go up a little bit. And without Kristaps on the court, he's averaging 1.58 DraftKings points per minute and 1.53 FanDuel points per minute. That's elite. That's Giannis. Well, not quite Giannis. That's Giannis this season territory, not Giannis approaching 2 fantasy points per minute of last year territory.
Right.
All right, so that's be a good one to look at there. I had a lot of moving parts here. Did we get an actual starting lineup yet for Dallas?
Not that I've seen. Let me pull up our news channel here.
Because so they've got a couple guys that are coming back that have returned from the health and safety protocol. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with Maxi Kleba. He did have COVID-19, as best I can tell. Again, we're guessing on some of these, and there's not unless a player really comes out and says I have it. They're all in the health and safety protocol, and it's hard to know for sure. I'm pretty sure he has it because some of his teammates that were eligible to come back did not, and he was one of them that did not come back quickly. Josh Richardson did have it. We saw him with shorter minutes in his first appearance back. So I want to see what's going to happen with Brunson is sort of what I'm leaning towards here. Are they going to start him? Is it a Willie Cauley-Stein ceremonial start? How are they going to match up with DeAndre Ayton? That's just more where I'm curious on this one because Phoenix, somehow, really good team. Let's talk Chris Paul for a second here. No Devin Booker for another game. Chris Paul been absolutely phenomenal this season. What is this, like year 1 million or whatever it is? He's been around, was it like year 15 literally? So, he's someone that I think is very intriguing this evening. How do you feel about Ayton? Anything on our second to the second game, our penultimate late night hammer?
Yeah, I called in my column today, I called Chris Paul the best point guard of his generation because I couldn't figure out if he was like the current generation or the last generation, where he actually fit into that. So I guess kind of gave him both generations really. But yeah, I love the spot for Paul again today. With Booker off the court, I think the production is right there. So definitely getting a ton of them in my crunches. He was one of my top players. Let me see if I still have this filter. Yeah, he was my second highest return player if I was entering the previous crunch. He would have been about 50% of my lineups. Lillard would have been the top at like 75, 78%, depending on how I tweak things going in. But yeah, give me as much Chris Paul as I can get to on FanDuel today. I think the play is right there as well over on DK. Getting not too much ownership either. Less than 15% ownership, right around the same percentage as he's coming up in the optimal lineups. So I really like the Paul play. I think he's right there.
All right, let's talk SuperDraft for just a second here. So key things about SuperDraft is they are sponsoring the Saturday Deeper Dive. So now you're going to get 2 shows for Saturday basketball. That's very cool. We want to thank them for that. Secondly, they have now partnered up and are offering their biggest contest thus far. I believe it is I want to say it's $1 million contest for the Super Bowl. It's a high buy-in level, but I saw Alex tweeting about it earlier. So it's not $1 million top prize, but that's their prize pool. By far the biggest one that they have. Tonight, I was looking earlier, and they have a $50,000 main contest, which is probably their 4th biggest one that they've ever done. They also have, and that's $15 to enter. Currently, there are 1,800 spots left in that. They have their $10,000 4-point play. There is 1,100 spots left in that. That is $4 per game, and then or per entry. And then they have their NBA 5,001. That is a multi-entry contest, 150 there, but it's just $1. So you can definitely check stuff out. They also have the nickel, which is a 5-set contest that you can just get used to the site, get used to the uploads. They do have late swap. And they are CSV friendly and supported by Fantasy Cruncher. The tricky thing about them is you can literally play anybody you want as long as you fulfill the position requirements because they do not have salaries. How do they handle that? Well, they have multipliers for each player. So what they do is they've taken the best of FanDuel, the best of DraftKings, they've put those hands together, and they've added a multiplier on top of it. So you get double, triple bonuses. You get 3 points for blocks and steals. It's literally scoring on steroids. And then what they'll do is each player, the farther down the depth chart and the pecking order you are, the closer to a 2 multiplier you get, the closer to a superstar you're going to get more like a 1.05 multiplier. So like today, my best 3 plays, and we'll look and see what Alex has done with the projections here, but my number 1 play, Enes Kanter, 1.85 multiplier. He's a little spendy on DK. You got to burn your center spot on FanDuel. But hey, 1.85 on Kanter, a guy who can, put up 30 combined points and rebounds and get the double bonus and all of that. That's pretty good. DeJounte Murray is my number 2 play. He's a 1.5 multiplier. I already love him on all the sites. He's averaging around 40 fantasy points per game over his last few. Now we're going to get a 1.5 on top of that. And then Jeremy Grant locked in at a 1.6 multiplier. So those are the three guys I would like to start my team with. But that's how you can play over there. So it's a lot of fun. And again, the key thing is late swap. The other thing they're going to do a lot of times, not tonight, they're locking at 8 o'clock. But if there's a little gap in games from 7 o'clock to 7:30 start or even an 8 o'clock start, and they can still get a good 5-6 games on their main slate, they're going to lock later, and we're going to have shows up to lock for them. So definitely check it out. Go on over there. If you use the promo code Awesemo21, that's Awesemo21, you'll get a $50 free on your first deposit if you put in $50 or more. That's a pretty sweet deal. And that's available in Super Cash, which comes out of your account first into the contest.
And I don't know if people out there realize when we say that, that they're delayed, they're doing a half hour later start on some slates and things like that. I don't know if people realize that's specifically for us and for our audience so that you guys can jump into those contests. You can still get your lineups into these other ones. They take those first couple games off when there's a few in the back to accommodate us. So jump in there, check them out. It's a really fun site to play on. I had a lot of fun putting together the lineup on the show with Spags last night. So I'm going to be playing over there a little bit, and I encourage everybody else to.
And their NBA contest, it is $1 million prize pool. It's the big ballers, y'all. $4,000 entry fee. You know one Alex Awesemo Baker's going to be in this one, but 267 entries in it. So they have partnered with some casino ventures here, and they are trying to attract some high scale players over whales, as they like to call them. Those guys may not. So we get some of the online casino people. They may not know sports as well as perhaps poker hands. So check it out. Definitely a good spot over there at superdraft.io. They have both an app and a website. The app is very, very good. I like to use the app more often than not. All right, let's see here. We did get, so the Heat are without Leonard, Dragic, Harkless, Bradley, and Silva. No surprise there. Jimmy Butler playing allegedly without a minutes limit, as they mentioned on the earlier show.
That was weird.
He's lost somewhere between 10 and 15 pounds. I would think without a minutes limit means they probably don't have a plan. They're going to kind of see how it goes. I would be shocked if he plays more than 32 minutes. This is a guy that was just raking in the fantasy points previously. I do not think he will be in my player pool. How do you want to handle this one? I'd like none without Dragic, but I'm a little nervous about Butler here.
Yeah, I don't love the situation with Jimmy coming back. You mentioned he was racking it up in the earlier part of the season. I was getting to him a decent amount, but with the rumored weight loss and with a guy coming off an illness like that, and it's just the fragile nature of the way that the team is right now, just with unpredictable ins and outs and everything. I'm trying to kind of maybe avoid them a little bit in general, unless somebody really pops. And we're not getting that in this situation. So if I get them, I'm not going to be really happy about it. Bam was the only guy who I was going to maybe try to get to today. And even he wasn't coming up very much for me in my last crunch that I ran. He was earlier today. So I'm going to look at him, but I don't really want to get to much Hero. I don't really want to get to much Jimmy. I just don't trust what the minutes are going to look like for Butler, how his being on the court is going to impact the other guys when they haven't played together in a little while. So it's kind of a night off for me as far as the Heat goes. I'm hoping.
All right, I've got a question here in premium chat. I'm trying to move my stuff here. So they were asking on FanDuel, so the blue site for you. I will sort of answer the question on DraftKings. Devontae Graham coming in around 15%. How do you feel about that? For me on DraftKings, where he is 6,800, there's a little bit of danger in that price because we've got Rozier, you've got the younger Ball brother. There's just a lot of options there. I feel that's kind of a price neutral to a little below neutral for me. We're having him at 4.4 DK points. I usually try not to get anybody that doesn't have on a slate this size, at least 5 or a 5.1 multiplier projected off of where their price is. Will I get a few of them with the randomness? Yes, but I'll try to suppress those guys more so than I would the other players. How do you feel about him on FanDuel?
Pretty similar to that. He looks a little bit over-owned for what I'm getting for him in terms of probability of hitting his target. I've got him at a 42-point target. off a 29.4 projection in my numbers, 28.8 in Alex's. That puts him under 5% chance of getting to that target score that you're going to need from him. And I think there's going to be a night where we're going to need these guys to, really deliver on the actual scores. These are to total up to a 415 point total, by the way, when I say these scores. So if he gets that and everybody else in your lineup hits their target based on this, you get 415 points, which hopefully is tournament winning. So Graham, a little bit, he's a fine player. I just don't think I'm going to get to him. And I don't think you should really be getting too much of him if you're using Alex's projections and Cruncher. If he mixes and matches into a couple of my lineups, I'm totally fine with it. I think he could certainly have a good game here, just not forcing his way in by any means.
I've seen this question a few times, but I'll answer it. Can you play Tillman and Clark together on FanDuel? Yes, you can, which reminds me, they're both in my DK cash lineup. I forgot to go build that. You guys hit the mark that I asked for. Hey, get us up to 1,000 likes. We would love that. I am now going to go drop 10 $1 head-to-heads there on DK, username EMac, and you guys knock yourselves out. Have some fun. But I am playing.
Free money. Go get them.
I believe I am. I know I'm playing Tillman. I'm pretty sure I'm playing Clark. I'm almost positive because that was my shell lineup, Terry. And this is the one where it's let it ride.
I think
I am not sorry. I'm not playing Clark. I am playing Clark and Tillman together on Yahoo. I am playing Hassan Whiteside in this lineup, though. Enjoy, people. Enjoy.
Interesting. Hassan and his unpredictable production. That should be fun for you.
Yep. Well, it's
revenge.
revenge.
Toward the 16-minute side rather than the 10-minute side.
It's revenge. Come on. We got to do it. Speaking of Miami indirectly, it looks like KZ Okpala. I can never say his name correctly. KZ Okpala will be starting over Kelly Olynyk. Anthony Davis is playing and starting tonight.
Okay.
So those are a couple of the other moving parts we have.
Did you do anything differently based on AD coming in as far as what you were going to do with LeBron previous to that news? Were you assuming AD was going to be in or AD was going to be out?
I was assuming he was going to play, and I would have gone for LeBron if AD did not play. I think they're both reasonably priced for their this year's production, and if one or the other is out, run, don't walk, run to get the other one in your lineup because their prices have come down. If it's a closer game, will they play more? Sure. Is this going to be a good game? I don't know. It's the Lakers Celtics. Isn't that always a good game? But Celtics, reasonable, not awesome, but reasonable defense here. Lakers, one of the better defenses. Would it shock me if this was a game that had less than 200? I didn't look at the over-under, but less than 210 points? No, it wouldn't. I'm not really excited about anybody in this game right now. From a fantasy standpoint, I may get a 5% here or there of somebody, but I don't think I'll get more than 5% of my entire player pool from this game. Does that matter?
Yeah, one of the lower totals on the slate for sure. It was like 217.5 was my last update, but that was a little while ago, earlier this afternoon. So I should probably update that actually. But to your point, it's just it's one of the games on the slate that's a lot likelier to go. Not explosively high in scoring, in real life scoring, and most likely not fantasy scoring. A lot of good players on both teams, but the Celtics getting healthy, getting everybody back into that rotation, kind of dampers their abilities or their upside as fantasy options, and the pricing hasn't really come down to accommodate that. Makes the team better, but it definitely dings them a little bit on fantasy options. And then, like you said, LeBron, AD priced appropriately for when they're playing together. If you get one of them on a day where the other one's out, then absolutely mash them into your lineups.
All right, hot off the press, 3 minutes ago, dropped the link in chat. The updated ownership percentage and then projections just came out 9 seconds ago. I was watching because I had Fred VanVleet and a lot of other players from that Sacramento game last night. God bless local announcers. They were saying, Harrison Barnes, if he wanted to, he could average 25 points a game in this league. It's like, really, he'd be a top 20 scorer in this league if he just wanted to.
He just hasn't wanted to. That's all.
No, sorry. Is he a fine player? Absolutely. Is he a number 4 guy on any contender there is? Yes. Can he do a little bit of everything? Yes. Yeah. Is he a threat? No.
Quality rotation player. I mean, that's insane.
But hey, there we are. Danny drops in a super chat here. He asks, what are your top 2 pay-up options on DK? I think Luka becomes number 1 right now. And Damian Lillard would be my other one.
Yeah,
Lillard was already there for me, but Luka definitely moves in. I'm just now uploading our project. I'm now like everybody else. I've built a little dashboard model. It's not sorting and doing everything as you guys, but I have to learn new things, how I can work with it when I'm doing the uploads, because I didn't think to build an upload sheet from that into Fantasy Cruncher. So it's like, shit. Doing everything.
Yeah, I'm hopping between my dashboard and my actual Excel model, which is just too clunky at this point to take another tab. I didn't want to do that to it, but I agree. I think the two points that you named, Luka and Dame, are the top two pay up options on the site. If you wanted to consider somebody else, Giannis is still sitting right there, of course, only down to a 9.6 optimal lineup appearance rate on DK. Just a little bit expensive. The upside's a little cap. We question maybe. Comes out, doesn't play his full complement of minutes. Alex only took 1 minute off of his projection from where he normally has him. But if you see a 30-minute game, a 28-minute game out of Giannis, he might not get to that ceiling that you need from him. So I'd be a little bit more reluctant to go to him there. A guy who's cheaper than those other guys, but still qualifies as maybe a high middle kind of a guy, or the low end of the pay up range, is Zach LaVine, who we haven't really touched on, playing on the opposite side of that game against Dame. I think both of those guys are firmly in play. I think pretty much everybody who's talked about this on our shows today brought this up. I wrote my column before I watched the shows. I felt so smart because I was like, oh yeah. And then if you play him alongside Dame, you pick up the advantage of having, they're both going to go off if that game goes to the high total that we expect. Everybody talked about that, but it makes a lot of sense. If that game's going as high as we expect it to go, it's going to be a pretty loose, pretty no defense kind of game. I think both of those guys have a very good shot at getting there, and I think it makes a lot of sense to put them both in your lineups. So consider both of them, and consider LaVine as another, spendy kind of an option on the DK slate.
Revealing the cards for those of you that scooped up those 10 head-to-heads of mine on DK in the $1 level. Damian Lillard and Zach LaVine are going to be on this squad that you're facing again.
Great minds, my friend.
Should I just say it? I'll just say it. Lillard, LaVine, Gary Trent Jr., Tillman, Cody Zeller, DeJounte Murray, Jeremy Grant. We haven't talked about anybody in the late game. What do you like from the late game? And then Hassan Whiteside, because I had 3,400 left and he's like 3,300. So there we are. What's living on the edge? You just need a little volatility out there these days, right?
That's it.
Don't try this one at home. Take my games, but don't try this one at home. It's not a safe lineup. The late slate. So maybe a little Draymond Green, whose price has come down. Perhaps some Blake Griffin, maybe some Steph Curry. I'm hesitant on everybody but Grant.
Yeah, Grant was the name. He's one of the leaders in our Boom Bust tool. Looks very good. Has played pretty reliably this season. And, we've talked about it a number of different times, just exceeding our expectations. He's had a few up and down games, but I think that's to be expected from a guy who was exceeding our expectations. Like I said, he's going to regress to what we've seen from him previously in some games in some spots. But I think what we've seen is probably real, and he just ranks out very well on the slate today. So yeah, I'm going to have a ton of him. I like him on both sites, and I think he's getting under-owned on both sites. I think people aren't really excited. I think there's a little bit of fatigue of rostering Jeremy Grant this year, and I think he makes a ton of sense to go right back to him. I'll probably get to a little bit of Draymond. I'd like to get to a little bit more Steph than I am. I think he looks pretty good. I would always like to have more Steph in my lineups, particularly as just that late night hammer. It's not we get that question a lot. Do you need somebody from the late night game? Well, the games don't know what time they're being played at, so of course not. But it's fun to have it, and it's fun to sneak up on the crowd. So, sometimes that pays off. But it's just Steph Curry. When I'm under the field on him, I like to get over the field on him because he's a guy who can put up that random 70-point night. I don't think this is necessarily that night, but I like the fact I like the ability to get to Steph when he's around 12% ownership and not any kind of egregiously bad appearance rate in the optimal lineups for Alex, and coming up in my metrics pretty well. So I'll take some Steph. Not really getting much of anybody else in this game, I don't think. Nobody leaping to mind. Blake is a guy who comes up for me a decent amount through the year so far, but not tonight for whatever reason. So take that for what it's worth.
All right. And then I like to play all the slates, all the formats. It's just sort of how I've created to diversify my risk. It's the Awesemo way. So I do play the DK tiers. I just wanted to point out, I do have 20% Anthony Davis on that, and I have 5% of of LeBron James. So what I do on that is I go in pre-show, set the percentages I want of each player. I can kind of tell where they're at. Their projections aren't going to change enough to really make people pop or not, because the guys that are the fringy plays, generally they aren't in those contests. DK kind of makes it more fun for the more casual player to go in and take a look at that. But what it becomes is kind of an exercise in your projections and how good are your projections against others. The one step a lot of players a lot of gamers don't do is correlation. Now, I don't worry about the correlation as much in basketball. I will keep some players away from each other just because it's kind of why I've never played them to get, like 2 centers or whatever. Sometimes people line up the positions where you don't want to do it. The other thing where people get themselves in trouble is I had taken Porzingis out of my player pool. There was nobody else in his tier that was playing after him. So if he scratched, I'm done. I'm taking a 0 there. Yeah. The closest person would have been John Morant to that tip-off. So you want to look ahead at things like that. Hockey, I like playing it in hockey. I like correlating some of the lines where you can. Sometimes they intentionally set it up so you can't in some cases, but in football you can. So that was just a different way. It's a game within a game. It's another strategy, and it helps kind of eliminate some of the variance that we have, or even out some of the variance. It won't eliminate it. Just it comes at things from a different angle, sort of like playing on the other sides.
It helps suppress it a little bit. And to that point about making those swaps and the unfortunate situation that you run into with Porzingis there. That always does make sense, explore especially when a big player like that is questionable, explore what you're going to be able to do if you've got him in a fair amount of your lineups as far as making those late swaps. And when you do it, guys, it's really important. This came up in Slack this morning. Somebody asked me, a guy had a killer lineup on DK and he made one pivot. It was from Maladon to Terrence Davis. And he asked me, was that a dumb pivot? And looking at it in the moment, no, not really. It wasn't. They were right around the same. With Davis was ticking up a little bit in the rates with the unpredictability and the changes that came out in that Toronto rotation. So he made the change, got 400 in savings, but what he failed to do was actually make another swap or 2 more swaps and utilize that money. He just made one direct swap from one guy to the next and didn't really gain any ground. He picked up like a point of projection and like a percentage point of optimal lineup rate, but then didn't do anything to jump from one guy and gain 10% at a different spot. So it's about the whole lineup, not just the individual spot. So it's really important to think about when you're doing this.
Now, before you beat yourself up about not playing, I can't remember his first name, Maladon there. Yeah. Not Tobias, some Theo. Thank you. He tied the NBA record last night for rookie 3-pointers in a game, going 6 for 6. Okay, I wrote him up as a risky play. Just saying he was over leveraged. Congratulations. He had his game of the year last night. That's going to happen sometimes. But then when you dig into it a little deeper, it's like, wait, he's done the best of any rookie in the history of the NBA. Okay, well, sorry I changed away from him, but how was I to know he was going to have lightning in a bottle?
You get an all-time outlier game from a guy sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, and I think that's one of them. So
who's played what?
I forget what the screen name was, but he won $700. He should be happy with that, not regretting the lack of winnings from the change.
Yeah, sometimes the going back and looking at it hurts.
For sure.
It hurts.
You can't let it haunt you. You just got to roll on, man. That's the way to handle it.
All right, I'm going to upload the Boom Bust tool one last time here. We just got that updated. Is there anything popping off of that one that you want to highlight for anyone? How do you use that? I've been getting more and more into the leverage portion of it and just deciding if it's somebody I want to play or not play.
Yeah, so it's important to look at the leverage column in conjunction with, most particularly for me, the optimal lineup column and the boom rating. You want to explore that because a lot of times a guy, let's take Xavier Tillman off the top tonight, right? We talked about how he's going to be probably a fundamental building block for DraftKings lineups just because of that price. If you're only looking at ownership in the leverage column, he looks like a terrible play because he's at negative 23.7 leverage. So all that really means is that we're getting him a lot of public exposure on a guy who is a fantastic play. So what that tells me is not avoid that play. It tells me that I'm going to have a lot of it. It tells me that I'm going to have to be at like 80% of him if I want to be over the field. If I want to be with the field, that's fine. So that's kind of the range that I get to on that because I look over at the other columns and I see he's in a 25.3% of the optimal lineups in our DraftKings simulations. That leads the entire DraftKings slate at any position. So that's a guy that I quite clearly want to have in the lion's share of my lineups anyway. So if I'm rolling 150 lineups out there, that tells me I want to have him in the vast majority of them, and then disperse a lot of those spots to other guys, mix and match with other spots so that you get that value building block, and then you're paying up to different guys as you go from there. So that's kind of how I use that. And then, of course, if you see a guy with great numbers and positive leverage, well, that's a home run of a play. So as I'm looking at it, nobody really pops out with a giant leverage score, but let's see, you get a guy like Dame Lillard today, right? We talked about him being a great play. 17.5% of the optimals puts him like 7th or 8th overall on the slate. 26.3% boom score. If median projection means anything for us, 56.3 median DraftKings point projection, and he's getting a little bit under-owned. So that's a play where if Game was getting like negative 15 leverage, I'd probably still be getting up on him a little bit, or at least 2 around the field. He's getting a positive 2.4, which means the field is way under him. So that makes me just want to put him in a ton of my lineups because you just gain so much by having him where others aren't.
Yeah, and it's funny that you look at the upside. I look at the bust rate because that kind of helps me understand it a little bit better. And you start
Would
backing.
You call this half full or half empty?
I would call it looking delicious. Hopefully, it's a tasty beverage.
It's iced tea. It's not scotch.
Oh, well, that's better than the water I have.
You know anybody who drinks this much scotch at a time?
No. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think of it better that way because there are certain players that I know I'm going to want to be over, and I want to look and say, what is my risk of ruin, to borrow a financial phrase there, and that's kind of how I'm calibrated to think about it. Question here: a 3v3, no 2v2. DeMar DeRozan and Cam Johnson, or Jeremy Grant and Josh Richardson. I am crossing Josh Richardson out of my player pool because he had COVID. So I'm hoping he plays 20 or 25 minutes, but I would not expect more than that. So I would lean towards the first one. Why? Because I worry about the risk of ruin. Terry, how does Mr. Glass half full approach this question?
Mr. Upside, that's me. I think I'd be on that first one as well. Just off the top and just looking at the guys that are coming up for me, that was significantly more. Not getting much Jerich at all. If I have him at all, I'd be surprised. So it was firmly on that first pairing for me.
All right. So here's a good example. So on DKSC, it's in our chat. They're saying Willie Cauley-Stein, crazy leverage there. Little bit. His chance of being in the optimal lineup is 8. Well, let's call it 9%. He's 0.5% owned. He has scored not even a fantasy point. His 3 games ago, he played 27 minutes. He had 9 fantasy points. The game before that, 18 minutes, 11 fantasy points. 15 points, 13 fantasy points. The last game, 9 minutes, 3 fantasy points. Not seeing the upside. Reach back a full month or a few weeks. The 15th against Milwaukee, 30 minutes, 30 fantasy points. Against Charlotte, 30 minutes, 30 fantasy points. So there's your upside. When have we last seen it? What has dramatically changed in this? Plus, Ayton, I think he's a reasonably good defender. He is somebody that is a good rebounder. That's going to be a competition.
That's the biggest thing to me is the rebounding.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't even need to really be a
But yes, look at those. But
the offensive dynamo that is WCS.
Yeah, you want to look at those, but that's where you're like, I'm not so sure I want to go there. And that's where I start to look at the boom bust. Mm-hmm. He has a 37% chance of not making 5 times his salary. He has an 8% chance of making 5 times his salary plus 10 points. That's 25 fantasy points. You're going to say 1 out of 10 times he's going to make that. Do you want to play him for that leverage? And that's why it's leverage, right? This is all math. I was trying to explain this to my mom today on the phone. I'm like, Mom, it's really all math. It doesn't matter if you really watch. It did way back in the day when there weren't projections and stuff like that. You needed to have a broad knowledge of the different sports. Now it's all math.
Yeah.
She was asking me about Robinhood and GameStop.
I was explaining that to my folks the day before.
Yeah.
But somebody brought that up on the show yesterday that Spags and I did. And, in a friendly kind of a questioning way, just asking why we talk more about the numbers than we do about, what we see on the court. And it's, I kind of responded in saying you could literally take the names column off of my projections page and just put the data there for me. I don't care what the names on the back of the jerseys are anymore. It just doesn't matter. We're not we call it daily fantasy sports, but this is really daily fantasy math problem. That's what we're doing every day. Believe it or not, guys, you are doing complex math. We're trying to fit the correct amount of different sized objects optimally into a suitcase, if you want to think about an analogy that way. And math is the way that we get there. So that's where all this stuff comes from. That's where these optimal rates come from. An important note on that leverage score, particularly for Willie Cauley-Stein, it's always really critical to monitor the timeliness of the updates, because sometimes the boom bust updates and then the ownership updates, and those numbers play off of one another. So I don't know that the 0.5 ownership on Willie Cauley-Stein is accurate to where we think he'll actually be, which would change the leverage score. And would probably come up in ownership, down in leverage, and make him look even worse. But to your point, yeah, you always want to focus on what is the median projection, because ultimately we do actually need some points, regardless of what the ratios are. What is his boom score going to look like, or his bust, and what is the optimal lineup appearance rate, regardless of what the leverage looks like.
All right, got the perfect question. Thoughts on Cantor on DK? I think he's a little bit spendy, but I think going to him is going to probably get you away from a Tyler Zeller and a Tillman. I think he is good. I was actually just making some lineups here, putting him, Levine, and Lillard onto the same teams. I do want to point out we have 6 minutes left, 5 by the time you hear this. There are 700 spots left on SuperDraft contest, their $15 contest. That is probably not quite going to rake, so not true overlay, but you're not going to be paying full freight there. Their $1 contest is 1,200 short. That one's probably going to go off about 3 or 4% empty, and then the 4-point play probably going to come close to filling. But I want to point those out because those little percentages add up a fair amount.
Any edge you can find, for sure.
I am going to have 50% Luka Doncic tonight.
Ooh, nice.
He's angry, my friends. The sea was angry that day.
Solid reference. I'm dropping mine into my sorting process here. I'll let you know where I end up in mere moments.
See, this is where we're doing a little teamwork, everybody, because he's got lineups, I've got lineups. We have real American dollars riding on this. So we're just getting together our stuff. I only have, I have 31% Chris Paul. That's a pretty nice number there. I'm going to increase that a little bit. Now I'm running some lineups with Paul, Luka, and Ayton, just because I can. And then the last one I wanted to do is some DeMar DeRozan, some DeJounte Murray, and some Brandon Clark. I've decided to land with Brandon Clark. So let's do 5 with him. And then let's roll the dice with a little bit of John Morant there. We're not sure. I don't think Dylan Brooks was ill either. I don't know that one for sure. But these are the guys where, again, as we mentioned, we don't have to know if the people were sick or not because of various privacy laws. So the players can choose to announce or not announce. We can sort of speculate when they return, like Danny Avdia. If he had said he does have it, but if he didn't, he's one of the last guys to come back for Washington. Even if he didn't say he had it, I would assume he probably did because the other players have now been safe to return. So these are the little tips and tricks that we have for you guys out there to find stuff. All right, now I need to show some hustle here because we are under 3 minutes.
Yeah, I just realized I never downloaded my CSV.
I'm doing that right now because, I said I was going to play cash games tonight. How is this going to work with my sorting process? So hopefully you guys can see what we're doing here, but it is a bit of a challenge, but this is where the fun is. And because we use all the Awesemo projections and the numbers and everything, that takes a lot of the heavy lifting away from what we're really doing here. And that's something that has dramatically helped me. So like today I was 1/10 of a point away from making 4X on Showdown Hockey this morning. I ended up 3.5 times. I tripled up on my college basketball. I 5X'd my soccer. So these are all, I wasn't playing a ton of money, but this is just little ways where I can earn some DK crowns, which turn into, or milestones, which turn into some heavy crowns, which turn into, between $70, $100, and $500 a month. When you collect them and add them all up. So these are just little games within the games that you can play and enjoy in different ways of doing it. So we have
You are so much better at that stuff than I am. I leave so much of that on the table.
Well,
Because you're smart.
I like to test out our content because I give our guys a lot of feedback. All right, I've uploaded here. So I give a lot of feedback to our content and how things are used, and can we get sorting columns on this, or can we find this on that? And I like to be able to do that, especially for some of our tertiary sports. So for hockey, which we do the best thing we have for hockey is I can play it while I'm doing basketball. Why can I do that? And then here's a money secret for you, because everybody's focused on basketball. We have the premium Slack chat, which is alerting us to line changes, goalie changes, and all of this. So I'm going to spend a moment talking about this since we didn't have any earth-shattering NBA news. But hockey has now become my most profitable, from a percentage standpoint, sport over the last 2 seasons. I play 3 different formats, and I play every single day. And the reason I'm able to do that is there is no starting lineups for hockey page. There is no, here's what we're going to get. There is no really NBA Twitter version of hockey. There is, but we have all of our guys following the different beat writers. They watch in center ice. They're watching the practice before the game, the line rushes to see who's changed with who. Hockey has this archaic tradition of whichever goalie was first off the ice of morning skate is probably going to be the one who starts, but then they never confirm it. So there's all this unknown. That is all changing at the same time as NBA lock. I'm able to do that and NBA because we have an excellent news source here. My trick on that, when we're up like we are tonight, I'm just playing the late slates for hockey. Because there are so many games on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, you get a bunch of 4-game and 3-game slates. I am way better at those than I am the 11 and 12 and 14-game slates. I prefer not to play those unless I'm going to play the tiers contest, which it's just focusing on skaters. And by the way, our projections. So this is ways where you can find these, these little edges, and then at the end of the year, you can get something that's called a 1099. Most of you watching don't know what a 1099 is because you're not getting it. That means you're profitable and you've made more than $600 and they're reporting the income on it. That was due today or tomorrow. I'm sure the sites are going to ask for me. I'm sure they're going to ask for an extension and not give it to us till the end of February like they do every bleeping year and screw up all our taxes. But that's the end goal of all this, right? To make money and have fun. I'm having fun. I'm not hitting the redeposit button, and I'm getting a little something taken out. So there we are. That's a little lessons to learn, because now I'm moving it in to sports wagering, which is now legal in Virginia. So I'm setting up my accounts, and they can't give me enough money. Hey, deposit $4,000, we'll give you $1,000 bonus. Hey, give us $500, we'll give you $500 immediately, right? So I want to be liquid so I can take advantage of all this, because I know it's only going to last for a couple months. That's the end game. This better be a good year / winning year for me, because I'm getting all of these deals. That's how you can be profitable in a sport that gets tougher and tougher every day. So life lessons there.
Good stuff. And you just answered like 9 frequently asked questions within that. So, I mean, I hope everybody was paying attention and listening all the way down to the tax. How do you pay your taxes on this stuff? What happens when you win? That was all in there. So I hope everybody was paying attention to that quick little tutorial.
If you are a 1099 contractor like most of us are as contributors for Awesemo, you want to prepay your taxes, because otherwise they're coming for that big chunk at the end of the year. And if you haven't set it aside, that can be a little bit sad. Key things we have tomorrow. Only one show. How does that happen? Well, Super Bowl's next week. In the can right now.
We have celebrating in the background.
Yes, we do have a prop betting show for the Super Bowl. So we have Ben Raza and I think it was Julian Edlow have gone through and done the Super Bowl props and first look in betting. Yeah, it's 2 weeks away. But now, or a week away now, but now is when you get the good deals for mispricings and things aren't quite as tight, and what are the misperceptions and what's going on. They'll tell you how to handle all of that. You can get that on the Awesemo Podcast Network because it's one of our non-live before lock shows. That's already gone out, and it's on the YouTube channel. Tomorrow we have one show. It looks like it's going to be a 4-game or 5-game NBA slate starting at 7. There will be the deeper dive starting at 6. That will be with Josh Engelman and with Eric Lindquist. So you'll definitely want to check that out. But kind of a kickback day tomorrow. I'll be snowed in here in Northern Virginia because I'm on by the I-95 corridor. Is that storm reaching all the way up to where you are, Terry?
From what I saw, we're getting it on Monday, I think. So it's taking its time coming up the coast. But yeah, we're supposed to get walloped by it too. It's been just freezing here the last couple of days.
Looking forward to shoveling snow. Always fun.
Lucky you.
Always.
I get out of that one because I live in an apartment building. So.
Well, hey,
home ownership.
We now work remote. The buses aren't picking up the kids. Can't we just wait till it melts? Do we really have to
leave it out there till spring? Who cares?
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go have some pizza because I am hungry. It is going
Nice.
to be supreme, and I am looking forward to it. You can follow Terry at DigitalB21 on Twitter. I am at EMac DFS, and it is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck. My wife and her friend were